you for being here. Another Square and Compass live stream. Sorry for being a little bit late. I had a couple things I had to take care of, but I'm here now. So, welcome. Thank you for being here. I hope everybody took a moment today at 11 a.m. or anytime they could to spare a thought for if you're in Canada, United States, for our veterans, um, for those who are currently serving, those who have served, those who passed away in the line of duty, those who were injured, and to spare a thought for them, to spare a thankful thought for what they did for us, as well as a hope that back home they continue or they receive the care and support that they need. Um, because a lot of speaking to a few friends of mine who are from the military and formerly deployed, there's the injuries that you suffer on the battlefield, and then there's also the mental and emotional toil that many still have to deal with once they return home. So, Mujif, welcome. Thank you for being here. I hope that you're doing well. I hope you'll take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. Let me know if you have any thoughts on Freemasonry. Um, Positive, negative, neutral. I'd love to hear them. That is what my stream is. We talk about Freemasonry. And I think, Mujif, you might be new to the stream. I don't know if I recognize your name from before, so... And I hope that on my personal channel, you guys tuned in. This morning, I was live streaming from the Windsor Cenotaph, where they had their Remembrance Day service. Assalamu alaikum to you as well, Firaj. Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well, Firaj. Hit that like button. I think you might be new to the stream. I don't know if I recognize your name. If you want to take a few moments to hit the like button, subscribe button, and let me know how you're doing. And if you have, any thoughts on Freemasonry. One thing I was thinking about discussing is this idea of grand unified theory of housing, which I've been reading about. Basically, this idea that when it comes to any problems that exist within a society, especially America and Canada, any issues, the major underlying factor that is causing any problems within that society or that community is housing. And my suspicion is there may be a Masonic connection there as well, in the sense that as people struggle to purchase houses, to be able to afford houses, as older generations have massively appreciated assets, and that those assets they refuse to leave, refuse to kind of pay a fair share on them, as in Texas recently, it causes younger people to not have access to home ownership, not have access to asset appreciation. As a consequence of all of the above, younger people are less likely to join a Masonic lodge, because why would they? If you are struggling to be able to afford a house, are you really going to put any emphasis on being part of a civic organization like Freemasonry? Or are you going to focus on saving your money, working 2 jobs, whatever it might be? Dead Demono. Hello, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. Firaj, very sorry that I cannot understand what you're saying. But to both of you, please hit that like and subscribe button. I would truly appreciate it. Let's give it a few minutes to see who joins. Thank you, Firaj. I appreciate the hearts very much. You can still hit that like and subscribe button. Please don't forget. And as I noted, we're going to give it about an hour before we start to just hang out and see who jumps in. And then maybe I'll talk about my specific topic, Freemasonry and housing. Unless is the stream kind of coming in funny, or is it coming in okay? I don't know if you guys can see me well. I think you can. "31 Atlas 423. I did not. I have no idea what that means. Help me out. What does it mean for a day without Russia? Or 3I Atlas. Because I do not know what that means. Having said that, I mean, when it comes to any country, I will always support the people, not necessarily the government per se, but the people of the country, certainly, and that includes Russia, and the people of Russia, the Freemasons within Russia. So yeah, I think I definitely support them all, because whether it be the Freemasons in Russia, Freemasons in Ukraine, wherever it might be, I think you have to be really careful that you do not connect the people of a country with the government of the country. Let's give it a bit more time. Please take a moment once again to hit that like and subscribe button. And let me know how you guys are doing. And let me know if you did join me at all for my live stream at the Windsor Cenotaph this morning, celebrating or commemorating Remembrance Day 2025. If you have a day from work, then I hope that, aside from enjoying it, you do spend a few moments turning your thoughts to those who have served our countries, whether it be Veterans Day in the States, Remembrance Day here in Canada, Remembrance Day in England as well. But the first hour, we just wait to see who joins. Firaj, thank you for the hearts. It is much, much appreciated. By the way, I had a great 1 a.m. stream today, so thank you to everybody for that as well. We got the hearts. I think we got Smokey. How is it going? Whomever is giving the hearts, thank you for doing that. David Vickers, good evening from planet Zog. I cannot pronounce that. Good evening from planet Earth, David Vickers. Thank you for being here. I hope that you are doing well. Thank you for joining. I hope you'll take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button if you're new to the stream. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. And like I said, thank you so much for joining. I greatly appreciate it. I do not know what Vedic astrology is. I've heard of astrology, obviously, but honey, I do not know what Vedic astrology is. So, honey, if you want to let me know, what is Vedic astrology? And this channel, obviously, we talk about Freemasonry, but I'm not sure if Vedic astrology has any connection to Freemasonry, not to my knowledge. What is Freemasonry? Freemasonry is a umbrella term that refers to civic organizations or civic groups that evolved from or are descended from stonemason guilds in the Middle Ages, the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. So think civic organizations, civic groups, fraternities in many cases, social groups. Afternoon, Uncle Cracker, David Vickers. It's a systemic electronic vibration we send to planet Earth. Well, there you go, David Vickers. Thank you for doing so. I hope that you'll also send a like and a subscription to Planet Earth, particularly to this channel. Brother Courtney, yes, happy Veterans Day to those in the States. Happy Remembrance Day here in Canada. I hope you all take a few moments to give a thought to those who have served and continue to serve our countries. Grind, my dad was a Freemason. Awesome, Grind, my dad is a Freemason, as were both of my grandfathers, I should say, on my mom's and my dad's side. Welcome, Grind. Thank you for being here. I hope you are doing well, as always. To everybody watching this, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you'll take a moment to hit like and subscribe and ask me any questions you have about Freemasonry. Any thoughts you have, positive, negative, or neutral. I mean, I don't know if I'd use the term endorse. What I would say is I love Freemasonry. I don't necessarily endorse it for anyone else. It's a personal opinion whether you want to be a Freemason or not, but I can say I love talking about it, and I endorse my channel because I love talking about it, but it's an individual decision if you want to join or not. I am combat veteran, U.S. Navy expeditionary. Well, then on this Remembrance Day / Veterans Day, really I suppose every day we should do it, but thank you for your service. Like I said, I cannot imagine I'm very lazy and very much a wuss. So I cannot imagine the sacrifice that goes into being a veteran, whether it be Navy, Army, or just any branch of the military. How do Freemasons resolve conflicts? I'm assuming you mean between members or among members. Well, I mean, when you say real world, there you go. I agree with Mr. Keeps. Real world examples. Freemasonry, it's people. People have conflicts between them. It's human nature. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't. We are taught when you join Freemasonry that if there is conflict between brethren, you are kind of expected not to actually enter the lodge together, but rather to take a moment outside of the lodge to speak with one another, to discuss what your issues may be, why you're in conflict, and find some type of resolution. If for whatever reason you can't find a resolution, then it's expected that one or both will just leave the lodge and not attend the meeting so they don't disrupt the harmony of the lodge. So basically walking away for the good of the lodge. But I think that's become a very misunderstood idea within Freemasonry. Grind. I'll answer that question in one second, because grind, it's a little bit more complicated than the way you describe it. What I always try to tell people is really what they're saying is if you're so frustrated and angry at somebody that you can't sit in a room with them without devolving into anger or arguments or argumentation, then walk away. But first and foremost, you're expected to be a mature adult. And part of being a mature adult is being able to sit with people with whom you disagree, in some cases, even with whom you don't like, and work together in order to achieve whatever you need to achieve. You wouldn't save your job, right? I'm not going to go to work because I don't like so-and-so, because there's something important there. Freemasonry is the same way. If there's a significant enough conflict that If the conflict is significant enough that a third party needs to get involved, you can go to the worshipful master of the lodge or even the Grand Lodge and ask for them to sit down with both parties and try to mediate some type of solution. So, grind. So, does the secrecy of Freemasonry protect valuable knowledge, or does it foster unnecessary? Well, I mean, I've given this example before. It's not that the secrecy, I would use the term privacy. It's not that the private nature of Freemasonry protects valuable knowledge. If by valuable you mean valuable in terms of money, um, okay. I mean, there's a lot of Freemasons out there online. Some channels are great, some are growing and becoming great. You can support whatever channel you want, right? I think for me, this is about turning passion into profession. So it's not valuable. None of the private or secrets of Freemasons, none of them protect valuable knowledge in the sense of knowledge that will get you rich, get you famous, politically valuable. That's not what Freemasonry is about. But valuable in the sense of it's valuable because it preserves and strengthens the bonds of brotherhood, and there's a value in that, right? So what I mean by that is, let's imagine, Grind, that you have a family recipe. I'm actually, interesting enough, a member of a Masonic lodge in Israel, Lodge Holy Land number 50, but I'm still going to put you in timeout for 5 minutes. Oh, well, then that's not good. You should not be doing that. No matter how much money you were to give me, I'm never going to tell you those secrets of Freemasonry. So, why is the secrets valuable, and why should we maintain them? Because when it comes to, for example, the modes of recognition, it's like a family recipe. If you've got a family recipe and it gets passed on from your grandparents to your parents to you, you're not going to put it online, right, and tell everybody what the recipe is. And you're not going to do that. It's not about, some people would say, well, why don't you share your recipe? That's fostering unnecessary suspicion about the recipe and what's in it, or making people jealous. But it's not about that, nor is it about protecting something valuable in the sense of financial gain or power. It's something valuable because it preserves the bonds of it preserves the bonds of your family. It preserves familial bonds between generations. Freemasonry is the same way. Our secrets, they are incredibly valuable, but not because you get money for them, not because you get power from them, rather because they preserve and strengthen the bonds of brotherhood between generations of Masons. So, I hope, Grind, that made sense. Well, I'm not going to do either of those things because I am cautious. Yellow banana. Well, I'm sorry you hate Freemasonry. I hope even if you hate Freemasonry, you do not hate me, at the very least. And maybe over time, if you grow to think I'm an okay dude, maybe you'll reconsider your thoughts on Freemasonry. But by all means, tell me, why do you hate Freemasonry? For the record, I don't think Freemasons have anything against bananas, yellow bananas or any other type of banana, so I'm not sure why you would hate us, but let me know. Maybe I can help you reconsider some of those thoughts. Or some of that hatred, I should say. That's very true. Hatred is bad for people and their heart, I think. I don't know what it is. Well, hopefully I can help teach you what it is, or at least how I view it. I can't speak for all of Freemasonry or Freemasons. I can just speak for my knowledge of Freemasonry and what it is. Um, but hate is definitely not good for people's soul, right? Although hating everything you don't understand, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand. I try not to hate anything. That seems to me, well, if you don't know it, how can you know it's bad, right? You look like I am not Russian to my knowledge. I have no issue with Russian people, but I am not Russian to my knowledge. That is true. You can call me whatever you want, Pinko, so long as you hit the like and, or PinQ, so long as you hit the like and subscribe button and give a 99-cent super chat. If you do that, then by all means, you can absolutely hit that like and subscribe button. Or if you hit the like and subscribe button, you can comment whatever you want, and even do a 99-cent super chat. Why do I look Russian to you? Like I said, I don't mind. We got debates about my ethnicity happening in the chat at the moment. Maybe I do. I mean, those DNA tests go pretty far back to my knowledge, and they examine kind of the heritage of people going back generations. So maybe, to my knowledge, my family on my mom's side comes from Sweden. My dad's side, it's English. Well, do the $50 super chat and we'll see, Yellow Banana. You made your DNA test. It's probably safer, honestly. I mean, I'm not one who is a fan of conspiracy or conspiracy theories, but I was always kind of very hesitant about the idea of sending in a DNA sample through the mail to a company. That seemed not the best idea. I don't know if you can see these things, Apple Tree. I don't think it quite works that way. You can see the English in somebody or the whatever it is in somebody. Um, or who knows, maybe my mom's genes are just stronger than my dad's genes. Or my maternal side is just stronger than the paternal side. Don't think it works that way, Apple Tree. I am not going to Scotland for Christmas, sadly, though I'm sure it'll be incredible. I'm going to Scotland for a special award ceremony, of which I'm nominated to win. I'm leaving in about a week and a half, which I love to travel, and I haven't traveled for a couple months, so I'm getting antsy, getting a little bit stir crazy. I do not drink vodka. I don't drink anything, nor can I fly airplanes. I would question that, Apple Tree, and I'd be very careful. I'm definitely going to be posting a lot of content on social media while I'm in Scotland, England, just United Kingdom. I'm going to try to visit Freemasons Hall. I'm going to try to visit even Roslyn Chapel. I'm going to visit the Grand Lodge of Scotland. You're going to be seeing a lot of posts, a lot of social media stuff. Make sure you're tuning in for that from the 23rd to the 28th. Scotland is, well, GHG. Why so unkind? United Kingdom is great. I can't wait to be there. It's going to be a blast. Seems like unnecessarily unkind. GHG. Why not think happy thoughts? It's raining here. Rain is romantic. It washes all the dirt away. 7 Ebus says, okay. Hello, 7 Ebus. I hope you're doing well. Hit that like and subscribe button. It will be very cold, but oops, geez. Sorry about that. It will be very cold, but that's okay. I'm still looking forward to it. I grew up in Canada. Winnipeg specifically. I think I can handle a little bit of cold. I think I'll be okay. Yes, happy Remembrance Day. If you're in the States, happy, not even happy, but I guess respectful Veterans Day. You're all, like I said, spare moments, spare thought for those who have been deployed. One thing I was planning, or have been deployed, are deployed. Everybody who answers the call to serve our country. Um, One thing I was considering talking about today is this is something I'm working on, but this new idea of a grand unified theory of housing, more to the idea that when it comes to problems being faced in a society, and I would include a reduction in civic society, a big issue with that is, in fact, a lack of affordable housing opportunities, home ownership opportunities for young people. Um, Trump has been talking about that lately with the 50-year mortgage, which seems like a pretty terrible idea, to be honest. To me, not an economist expert, it just seems like a very bad idea. Um, but the point is, and I do think as home ownership has seemingly become more and more out of reach for young people, at least according to all the charts we're seeing, that is going to have a pretty negative effect on a desire for young people to engage in civic society, or social groups, social clubs, right? Because home ownership is part of a broader ideal of community engagement, community ownership. You own a part of your community, literally, right? The house in which you live is part of the community. So you have a vested interest in wanting your community to be successful. You want your neighbors to be successful. You want your town to be a success. If you're renting, some could argue you feel less of a vested interest in your neighbors, in your town, in your community, and therefore less of a vested interest within the civic institutions that allow your town to be a success. So, with the announcement of potentially the 50-year mortgage, with some of the charts I've been seeing lately regarding medium home, this is in the States, but medium home buyer age being 59, and the medium first time home owner is 40 years old, um, whereas it was 29 20 years ago. That probably has an effect on Freemasonry, on membership, or even on retention. You may join when you're young, but suddenly, if all of your efforts go to being able to afford a house, and you start saving every penny, you take multiple jobs, whatever it might be, maybe you remain a member, maybe you don't, but are you showing up, or are you taking that extra shift at your job in order to ensure you can afford the home? Apple tree. Apple tree, I would disagree with that in the sense that nobody is all anything, right? If you go back far enough in your family history, I'm sure there's some other stuff therein, but that's just for all of us, right? You go far enough back, you start to find some other stuff beyond kind of the first few generations. When I say first few, I mean, first few generations could be the first like 20 generations, right? I forget how many generations each person has if you go back to the start, but it's a lot. You do you, GHG, you do you. But thank you everybody again for joining. Right now we're just hanging out, waiting to see who wants to jump in the chat to say hello. And any thoughts on Freemasonry? Again, positive, negative, or neutral? I'd love to hear it. Well, a gentleman never says, I love Griffin family. A gentleman never says, but you can hit that like and subscribe button and let me know if you have any thoughts on Freemasonry. Again, positive, negative, or neutral. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. And the first hour of these streams, I just hang out and wait to answer questions. Then I have specific topics. Is Freemason a cult? If Freemasonry is not a cult, GHG, Freemasonry is a civic group or social group, right? What distinguishes cults from anything else, right? What distinguishes a cult from a group, amongst other things, is cults require unquestioning loyalty to either a leader or some type of ideology that is expressed through a leader. And you don't have the ability to question, to leave, to you're punished for leaving, you're threatened for leaving. That is what makes a cult a cult. And Freemasonry, first, it's a democratic organization, which means no one person has unquestioned authority. Everybody can be questioned. You have votes. You have new leadership come in at least every year. And while there are Masonic philosophies, there is no set Masonic ideology, right? Freemasons are free to think whatever they want about a variety of topics. Thank you for hitting the like. And once again, I love Griffin. A gentleman never says. What do you think of Scientology? I don't know a ton about Scientology, so it's hard for me to say. I have no particular issue with it. I mean, in my opinion, if you find something that brings you peace and happiness, I'm not going to judge it. To my knowledge, a Scientologist could be a Freemason because they believe in a supreme being, but I know very little about kind of Scientology's doctrines or their beliefs in general. It's funny, in Detroit, there is a Scientology temple. I think it's called a temple on like the main street when you get off the bus from Windsor. Because I'm always being asked about Scientology, I should really at some point go in and say hello to them and at least ask them for more information so I'm more well versed on them. I try to be I love Griffin family. Again, they may. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know enough about Scientology. Other than, to my knowledge, they could be Freemasons. I don't think I've ever met a Scientologist Freemason. I may have and just not known it because they don't ask. You know, as a general rule, when I'm meeting a Freemason, I don't ask them what their religious beliefs are, or to what religion they belong, or their belief in a supreme being. So I may have and just didn't know it, but to my knowledge, never met a Scientologist Freemason. Scientology is bad in general. Again, I cannot say. Like I said, maybe one day what I'll do is I'll go and I'll visit a Scientology building and just talk to them. Maybe get some information so I have better answers. I'll take a leaflet. I mean, why complain about a free leaflet, Apple Tree, right? I'll take a leaflet. One of my favorite video games is Dead Space. And I was told, I don't know if this is true or not, but I was told that unitology in Dead Space is based on Scientology. I have no idea if that's true or not true. And in Dead Space, unitologists are the bad guys, so I don't know. Take that for whatever it's worth. Well, they probably want to get to know people a bit better, right? Honestly, that might be something that Freemasonry could learn from Scientology, in that sometimes we are very, very quick to, somebody comes in, they're interested in joining, we immediately give them an application and try to get them to join. We should talk to them, get to know them better, ask them more questions. Let them get to know us better. Maybe Scientology's onto something in that approach. Oh, well, I don't believe in violent leaders. I don't believe in violence as a general rule. Certainly not violent leadership, so that does not sound good. But I've never, like I said, I've never really seen any documentaries on it. I saw Tom Cruise giving a couple interviews about Scientology, but I saw clips of it. I didn't see the whole thing, so But I do think there are some people who unfortunately confuse um, Freemasonry with Scientology, just as some people confuse Freemasonry with other types of religious belief or religions. So, or the Illuminati, or the or Satanism in some cases, etc., etc. Um, that I mean, first, hurting anybody's not okay. Hurting children is especially not okay. Again, I don't want to use even in a leadership role one individual to besmirch the whole, because unfortunately, and you see this with Freemasonry, you see this with the Catholic Church, you see this with so many different groups, and organizations and clubs, whether they be religious clubs, non-religious clubs, social groups, governments in some cases. Um, I don't believe that you can say, well, because one person who's in a leadership position turned out to be a bad person, that you can then create judgments against the entire group. Um, Now, again, to me, it depends. What is the group's ideology? What do they believe? What do they expect of their membership? But since I can't speak to any of those things on Scientology, it's hard for me to say. Um, no, yeah, it sucks. I mean, again, I don't support hurting anybody, but when somebody is hurting children, it's especially hard to understand, and especially I think sickening, horrible. Um, pick your word. It's especially troubling, I think. That sucks. That's really unfortunate when stuff like that happens. Obviously, the hurting is obviously terrible, but so is the um, cover up. And look, I can understand on some level a human desire to want to cover up, the horrible things that a friend of yours does, if he is a friend, if you find out he's doing horrible things. But you should never do that, right? And actually, one of the earliest things we learn in Freemasonry, and one of my favorite lessons in Freemasonry, is we're taught, look, if a brother Mason, somebody in your lodge, is hurting people, is committing crimes, whatever those types of crimes may be, you actually are expected to and have a responsibility to advise the authorities of the criminal activity, right? That is 100% your responsibility, to advise the authorities, advise the police. You don't protect people who are hurting others, both because morally it's wrong, but also practically, um, and from a matter of efficacy. If you are protecting people who are committing crimes, all you're doing is bringing the entire craft of Freemasonry into disrepute. And that goes all the way back to the Regius poem, way back in 1390. Marcus, Darkness, hello. Marcus, you remind me of, I do not know who Thorfinn Carl Sifeni is, but Marcus, you remind me of someone who can hit the like and subscribe button. That'd be very kind of you. Well, people can be wonderful, but apple tree people can also be very sick. You're right on both accounts. Well, bots are created by people. So anything created by people can have both the best qualities of people and the worst qualities of people. Um, well, it's, that's another way Freemasonry is different from a cult. In a cult, you're expected to put 100% of your work, trust, faith in the cult itself, even if that is at the expense of your family and your career. Within Freemasonry, you are told your family and your career come first. So, um, well, they are sick for sure, but people in general can be sick in a lot of different ways. That's just one of the ways. But people can also be wonderful in a lot of different ways. It's complicated. I don't know if I can think of anything more complicated than the human soul. define soul as you will, which seems to contain within it both the capacity for great kindness and decency and all of the best virtues, while also contains within it the ability to for great sickness and harm. I think within Freemasonry, one of the things we are taught, or one of the philosophies that kind of exist within, is that we have the ability to cultivate and build on our good virtues as a bulwark against the more negative aspects of ourselves. Leaves from the vine. Another thing we are taught within Freemasonry is not to be a reviler or a slanderer of religion. I do not hate Muslims. I've got a few Muslim friends. They're great people. I absolutely do not hate Muslim people. Nor should you, leaves from the vine, nor should anyone. You're a Freemason. Okay, well then that's awesome. I've been a Freemason since 2007. So almost 20 years, which is crazy to think it's been that long. Well, then it doesn't quite work that way, the Nigerian Nightmare. You can't just decide to be Freemason in your head. You actually have to talk to a Masonic Lodge. You can decide to hit the like and subscribe button, and I hope that you will do that. But it doesn't work to just decide you're Freemason. That'd be like me deciding I'm a football player in my head. You actually have to do something. Yeah, 2 million people is a lot. Leafs, I'm not a big fan of kind of pooping on any group of people, 2 billion of them in particular. The Muslims I've known, been lucky enough to know, do not hurt anybody. Nor are they terrorists, nor are they screwing animals. If you have a football, no, you can. I guess what I'd say is you could call yourself a football player, but you could not say you're a member of the Dallas Cowboy football team. Right. You actually have to join something. By the way, please don't forget hit the like and subscribe button. Well, I don't think you're speaking the truth, leaves from the vine. I think at best you may be speaking something you believe to be true. But one thing I've learned is just because you believe something to be true does not make it so. Jack Fullerton, I mean, Muslims like that are called people, whatever their names might be. So no, I do not concur with that. Please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button, by the way, to everybody watching this. But you could, if I do not know what that means, Zach, but thank you for being here. Fair enough, Jack Fullerton. I still appreciate you joining nonetheless. If you want to, you can give a 99-cent super chat. Welcome back, more fire. I'm sure he'll be back soon enough. And I'm very sorry to hear that, Zach, locked and loaded. Losing family members, fathers always sucks. In that way, I think it'd be particularly terrible. Right, I lost my mom about a year ago, but she had cancer. She'd suffered for a while. It was something more, almost I was at peace with her going because it was her time, it felt like. To lose in a tragedy or a tragic incident like that, I think that's probably very different. We did not, Nigerian Nightmare. Very sorry to disappoint you if you thought that, but we did not. Oh, Zach with the jokes. Alrighty. I do not know what a coexists is. I do not know what that refers to. I like to think that not just Freemasons, but that we in general can coexist with anybody. Well, I mean, coexist with any race, religion, creed, people of different political beliefs, religious belief, ethnicities, languages, ages. I think that's one of the greatest strengths of Freemasons is that we are able to promote coexistence and teamwork and building with people of different beliefs, faiths, etc., etc. I think that's one of the best parts about being a Freemason. Um, all right, Zach, let's put you in timeout for a little bit. Jack Fullerton, nobody wrong but Christians. I don't know what that means. Well, unfortunately, Nigerian Nightmare, there are a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding Freemasonry and Freemasons. There was a lot of conspiracy theories about Freemasons before 9/11. I think in some ways 9/11 exacerbated and gave a new kind of ground on which conspiracies could grow. We did not, however. Freemasonry and Freemasons were not involved in 9/11, except I will say, to the credit of the Grand Lodge of New York, and Masons around not just America but the world, after 9/11, the Grand Lodge of New York collected millions of dollars in donations from both American and New York American and Masons worldwide. That those donations were used to set up funds to help first responders' families, to help cleanup efforts. New York did a really incredible job, New York Masons, of supporting the city post 9/11. Rondo says, yo, hello, Rondo, how's it going? Thank you for being here. I wish I did. I think we in Freemasonry need to do a better job at learning more about our operative stone mason roots, which I don't think we do right now, unfortunately. So, I do not know how to build anything. I'm actually the worst builder in the world. However, that doesn't mean that we should not be trying to learn more about, building things and how we build things, even some very basic steps. Because I think we in Freemasonry need to show more respect for our operative Masonic brethren, operative Masonic ancestors, if that's the best word for it. We're going to give it a bit more time, 10 more minutes, then we're going to start talking and chatting about, I think, again, the idea of the unified housing theory as an explanation for some of the challenges being faced in 2025 and over the last really 40 or 50 years. I hope I do, Apple Tree. That's a very good point. I don't know if I necessarily have those gifts, but I'm trying to improve things. I'm doing my best to try to improve things. I'm using the tools I think Freemasonry provides to try to improve things, but there's many other ways that we can try to improve things. So I hope everybody finds within their own life that thing that they believe will allow them to help improve the world. And maybe share even what that is. Some people want to improve the world through music. Some people want to improve the world through literature, some through actually literally building things, some through community organizing, some become politicians, some become mechanics and fix things for people. There are a million ways to improve the world. I hope you find yours. Yes, that's a very good way to put it. Not all can build, but we can still help each other. I agree with that 100%. Uh, and I think everybody does, even if you can't literally build things, I do believe everybody has a skill. Everybody has the ability to make the world a better place. It's just up to you to find what that skill is or what that way is and then cultivate it. Who do you admire, Apple Tree? Whomever it might be, I hope that I'd love to know. Oh, that is absolutely people worth admiring and people worth admiration. I agree with that. And I mean, it's interesting. A lot of Freemasons actually, especially during this time of year, but also all year long, donate at food banks and homeless shelters, cooking meals for those who are struggling. Good morning, Outback Rustic Kitchen. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. Um, of course. Hello, Spirit. It is Remembrance Day today. Outback, I think you might be new to the stream. I'm not sure. If you are, please hit like and subscribe. Let me know if you have any thoughts on Freemasonry. Spirit, how's it going for you, brother? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here as always. Um, Outback Rustic Kitchen. Are you a veteran yourself, or are you doing anything to commemorate or notice? Um, not notice, but to commemorate or observe Remembrance Day, I should say. Okay, well, I heard that you guys don't have Remembrance Day on the 11th. You have ANCAP Day in April, if I recall correctly. Raven, I feel like it's been a minute since I've seen you. Thank you for joining. I hope you're doing well. Oh, so you have Remembrance Day and I guess ANCAP Day as well, if I recall correctly. Um, yeah, our Remembrance Day is November 11th. There's a lot of Freemasonry in Australia, actually. It's on my list of things I'd like to visit and learn more about. So, um, because Australian Freemasonry seems incredible. Anzac, okay. I couldn't quite remember what it was called. Anzac Day. That's April 25th. I think I learned, because somebody yesterday was telling me about it on the stream. I'm getting a lot of Australians and New Zealanders on my streams lately. Um, yeah, celebrate. I think commemorate is probably a better word. Observe, even, might be the best word to use. Note. Okay, so Outback, have you been on the stream before? Is it possible that I just forgot about you? If you have been on the stream before and I forgot about you, my apologies. If this is your first time, let me know if you have any thoughts on Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral. I'd love to hear them. Underground Thomas is back. Hello, welcome back, Underground Thomas. Thank you for joining as always. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I feel like it's been a little bit. No, we haven't. No, we haven't been on the stream before. Okay. Any questions or thoughts on Freemasonry? Please let me know. Busy is good. Busy keeps you busy. Yeah, you'll be fine, Raven. You'll be fine. I promise. You'll be okay. Wow, what a question that is. I mean, I'm concerned about Freemasonry in the next 15 years. There's a report recently out that if the numbers continue, Freemasonry in North America will cease to exist by 2040, and those numbers seem pretty accurate. When I say numbers, I mean the declining numbers um, of members. I mean, nothing is inevitable. If Freemasonry is going to exist in 100 years, it's going to look very different than it looks in 2025. I think it's going to be much more open. It's going to be much more of a club model as opposed to a volunteer model, or much more of a members based model as opposed to a volunteer based model. Um, I mean, I hope it grows. I don't know. What are you talking about? Metal crack? I'm talking about Freemasonry. Um, I do these streams every Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. and also 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't think it would need to be exponential growth to be viable in the long run. It would need to grow at a rate equivalent to kind of how fast the population is growing. Wouldn't necessarily need to be exponential. But I mean, if you had a plus even 2% growth in membership year by year, not like just 2% each year, that would probably be sufficient. Um, you do, Mike, I do not mean those people. I mean Freemasons like me. GRRR Fisher, no, that is not the case. Um, if you join, you do not get money. Anybody who tells you to join Freemasonry in exchange for um, money or fame or riches is at best incorrect, most likely trying to scam you. Freemasonry is not about joining to get money. It's not about joining for anything that you get for yourself. It is about um, joining to be of service to others. So you should never join Freemasonry. I don't ever think you should join anything to get stuff for yourself. You should join for what you can contribute. Um, I don't completely disagree with you, Spirit. I think you're on to something there. But that won't solve the problem because clandestine lodges, despite the press they're getting, they're actually not growing that much. They're not actually not growing themselves. I mean, they grow in the sense that a lot of clandestine lodges are like 5 years old or less. So if last year, if in 2025 I start Cameron's clandestine Masonic order, um, and I get, one person to join, you could argue I had 100% membership growth from 2024 to 2025, right? But at the end of the day, the clandestine lodges are not doing particularly great either. So it's a myth that they're doing well. I don't think joining would necessarily solve the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue being society is set up in a way that does not promote civic engagement. It actually, in some ways, punishes civic engagement, which we need to work on. We are not Luciferians, Mike. I think someone's been reading way too much Morals and Dogma and watching way too many incorrect YouTube and TikTok videos. Um, well, irregular and clandestine is not necessarily the same thing. It doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, right? Um, but even the irregular bodies are not doing particularly great. No civic group organization is particularly strong at the moment. So joining is not necessarily going to resolve the situation. Um, Reading David Ickel books. Yes, I think so. I'm trying to remember who David Ick is. Who is Lucifer in Freemasonry? Well, Freemasons, I think you're referring to, again, morals and dogma. Freemasonry is not a religion, right? There is no, we have Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Catholic, Protestant, Freemasons, Hindu, Sikh. So there is no standard idea of like the religious figure of Lucifer within Freemasonry. A lot of Freemasons don't believe in Lucifer or aren't Christian at all. Um, Freemasonry does not have its own Bible. That is incorrect, Mike. I think you're referring to the Masonic Bible you hear about. It's actually a King James version of the Bible. If you read it, you're not going to read anything different than you read in the standard King James version. The difference is on the cover, there's a square and compass, and on the inside, there's a space to sign. Um, because it's usually given as a gift to a new member when they're joining, if they are of the Christian faith. If they're not Christian, then they wouldn't be interested in it, right? So it's it's done for those members who are joining if they are of the Christian faith. But going back to your question of who is Lucifer, right? So there is no Masonic Lucifer. Morals and dogma, what Albert Pike was referring to, he was, as some would argue, a Luciferian or mystic. He believed that Lucifer, the snake in the garden, is different than the biblical fallen angel of Satan. But that was an Albert Pike specific philosophy that does not reflect to how, honestly, I don't think I've ever met any Freemason who has that view. That was specific to Albert Pike. Um, there's beautiful artwork in them as well, but the actual wording, it's no different than a King James Bible. What is a low level, Mike? What would be a sufficiently low level? Because I've heard that argument before that I'm too low of a level to know what's going on. Well, I've heard that theory as well. Uh, I do not. I mean, I'm not a Christian. I believe in a supreme being, but I'm not a Christian. Um, Having said that, I also don't like Lucifer. Um, but I mean, that's like asking me, do I like? For me personally, because again, I believe in a supreme being, but I'm not necessarily a Christian. That'd be like asking me if I like, I don't know, Medusa, right? I view them as mythical figures, not as figures that exist within the real world. Um, that's fine. I don't mind. It is, Finn. That's absolutely correct, right? One thing we're not allowed to discuss in a Masonic lodge is religion. The other is politics. So I cannot discuss religion or politics within a Masonic lodge. Obviously, that doesn't stop people from discussing it outside of the lodge, but within a lodge, you're not allowed to discuss it for obvious reasons, right? Those are the things that separate people. Um, yeah, low level, high level, that is always, that's something I've been hearing even when I first joined in 2007. There's always this idea of once you get to a high enough level, then you'll know the truth. Then you'll know the truth. So, um, well, Mike, I sleep pretty decently at night. Thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe. King Switch, I also hope you'll hit like and subscribe. Um, Stop being brainwashed by this guy. I don't think I'm brainwashing anybody. If I was trying to, clearly I'm doing a very bad job since clearly my brainwashing is not working on Mike. Um, Well, I mean, this idea of Freemasons hiding things between us, it'd be very hard to actually hide things from other Freemasons, right? Like, so for me, right, I've been a Freemason since 2007. I've attended over 1,000 Masonic events, meetings around the world. Um, no worries, you're local. Um, I've been to meetings in the Philippines, in Brazil, in England, in all around America and Canada, right? I mean, I could understand if, for example, every time I went to a meeting, I had to provide advance notice I would be there, um, in order to, let them know in advance or whatever it is. The fact I can just show up, be part of these events without needing to advance register. I can show up at the spur of the moment. It's like, how could they? I could understand if I'd been a Mason for a month or I had to pre register my attendance or whatever it is. I think once you've attended, 500 events and you've been around the world, if they were hiding anything from me, I do suspect I would notice at that point. Um, Unless I'm incredibly lacking in observational skills, which might be possible. Nicholas is here. Welcome, Nicholas. Been a minute. Thank you for joining. That is true as well. It is a brotherhood, and most of the secrecy about them isn't so secret anymore. For good or bad, you could argue both. I mean, I do think the privacy did serve a point. I've talked about this in the past. Um, right? It's the family recipe philosophy. How many of us, have something within our family recipe? Could be some family tradition that we don't share with others. It's not because there's anything nefarious about the recipe or the tradition. It's because um, it's because maintaining the privacy of that maintains the bonds of brotherhood or maintains the bonds of familiar relationships, maintains the family bonds. I think that's the same thing with Freemasonry. It is for sure. I mean, just by definition, right? The more people that you meet, the more people you have within your circle, the more opportunities for networking exists therein. I don't think that's true, apple tree. I think that's true in the short term. I think that's the case, but I think long term, it becomes very difficult for people to hide things in plain sight. At least I did visit heaven. I saw pink. Well, there you go. I mean, I guess I'd say I'm going to call you King Switch, even though it's KG Switch. I'm happy you made it back down here to Earth. Um, I'd rather you be down here than up there, at least for now. And part of my stream, so thank you for joining. Yes. Well, Raven is absolutely correct. Originally, the privacy was about protecting people's livelihoods, which is a very valuable thing to protect, right? They needed to protect their trade secrets, to protect their work, to protect their employment, to protect the ability for them to make friends, or not make friends, excuse me, for them to travel, make associations with other stonemasons to earn employment. Yeah, absolutely. If everyone knew. So you want to make sure you're keeping it within your friends, or more specifically within your colleagues. That way you could travel, make friends with another stonemason, know that he was legitimate, and you could work on a trade site with them and earn living for yourself and for your family. Well, I mean, corruption exists within the world, right? I mean, I think I'm much on the same side as you are. Underground Thomas, in that I don't believe in conspiracies. I do believe absolutely it is the case that there exists corruption within institutions, but I don't believe there's a grand conspiracy, certainly not at a global scale, not just within Freemasonry, but within any group, within any organization, religion, politics. I don't believe in grand conspiracies, right? I just believe individuals, it is possible for them to be corrupted. It sucks that that's the case, but I do think that is the case. Um, but I do also think that if you pay attention to the tools and philosophies of Freemasonry, it can hopefully help you understand a non-corrupt, healthy, and useful way to live. Um, yeah, so we got a couple mods on here. Thank you both for joining. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, sorry, Apple Tree. I got to disagree with you on that. Honestly, I think it's the opposite. I think corruption exists on smaller scales than people think. Now, that doesn't mean that right? That doesn't mean that corruption exists. I just think it's much less prevalent than people realize. Uh, there's theories that Jack the Ripper was a Freemason. There's actually a whole movie based on the idea that Jack the Ripper was a Freemason, but it's never been proven. To my knowledge, the most recent and most kind of accepted interpretation is that Jack the Ripper was not a Freemason. I forget who they pinned it on. It's not proven, but I mean, I don't think he was. It's one of those theories that sometimes pops up, but I've never seen any proof that it is actually the case. I think right now, somebody wrote an article, like an academic article a few years ago, actually naming the most likely Jack the Ripper suspect. If I recall correctly, let's see if I can get the name quickly. Aaron Kozimski is considered the most likely suspect. I don't think he was a Freemason. Yeah, so we don't know for sure. Can it be a Freemason? If I don't go to lodges? Well, you have to go to a lodge at least once if you want to be a Freemason, right? Because you have to join and you have to be initiated. I would say, in theory, you can be a Freemason if you go to a Masonic lodge once and never go back. But I would say you're not getting a lot out of Freemasonry at that point, and you're kind of doing yourself and your lodge a disservice, right? By refusing to attend regularly. You kind of need it's like having a gym membership. You can have a gym membership and say you're a member of the gym, but if you never show up, you're doing yourself a disservice in that you've paid money for membership and you're not taking advantage of it. And you're also not being there for others who may, if you and your friends are part of the same gym and you're choosing not to attend, you're kind of doing them a disservice. I agree, Finn. Sorry, is the audio cutting out for anybody else? Hold on just one sec. Must be the trolls. Maybe I will end this stream a little bit earlier. Because it seems like, I'm not sure what's happening. Or I could restart the stream. Audio visual is fine. All right. Well, I'm going to just keep talking for now. If anything happens, I'll let you know. Nicholas Ramita, corruption in the White House, name Taco Trump. Not being a lodge kind of defeats the point. Being a Mason is one of the few things. Yeah, well, being a Mason is absolutely one of the few things you have to leave the house for. Now, that's not to say, again, you can call yourself a Mason, but that doesn't. And you can be a Mason, you can be a member of a lodge, but if you're not showing up regularly, you're really defeating the purpose. And you're impacting the lodge as well. Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, but it's to be one, ask one, right, Finn? So what that means is you can approach them, talk to them, and ask about being sponsored, right? So yes, eventually you need to have a sponsorship or a sponsor by Masons, but that's not at the start. At the start, you just go in, express an interest in joining, and ask them for, um, ask them for more information about Freemasonry. Um, well, so you can. I mean, it's not that what you were told is wrong. It's just a little bit incomplete. You do walk in and basically say you want to join, but that doesn't mean an hour later you're a Freemason. You walk in, say you want to join, then they meet with you, talk to you, um, learn more about you. You learn more about them. There's a whole process after that, and then potentially you get some sponsors. You get an investigation committee. So I think what the Freemason was trying to tell you is it's not like you just walk in, say I want to join, and then an hour later you're a Freemason. It takes a length of time and there's a process involved. But to start the process, you absolutely can knock on a Masonic Lodge building, write a letter, send an email, give a phone call, and just say you want to join and see what they say. Finn, you have to be a vet to get in. You do not have to be a veteran to be a Freemason. I know many Freemasons who are not um, I know many Freemasons who are not veterans. I know some who are. But yeah, no, I'm not sure uh, where that comes from. But yeah, I mean, so Finn, if you do want to, be a Freemason, what I always recommend to everybody is, by all means, write a letter, knock on the door, send an email, get in touch with them, ask them if they want to learn. Don't even necessarily, join them, or don't even necessarily make contact with the desire to join right away. Right? Just learn more about it. Learn more about the brothers who are part of the lodge, about what you want to, about what Freemasonry is. I always say at the start, the most important thing is focusing on the brethren and how well you think you will or will not get along with the brethren in the Masonic Lodge. Right? One of the biggest dangers, like a lot of people when they're first looking at trying to join, focus on, they'll read Morals and Dogma, they'll study the Regius poem, they'll study as much historical stuff as they can about Freemasonry, which is great and it's wonderful to be enthusiastic, but they'll forget about the most important thing, which is how well will they get along with their brothers in lodge. Chris Watts, I was not on the wire. um, I am on YouTube. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. I would truly appreciate it. I hope that these questions or my answers have made sense. I am not Detective Herc. I don't have a detective job, so I need to rely on YouTube. So please hit like, please hit subscribe, even do a 99-cent super chat. Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Um, and proud of it. I love Windsor. I've always said Canada is the greatest country in the world, in part because we have the greatest neighbors in the world. Um, so is there a Greek lodge here? Well, I can't speak for the Greek lodge. When I hear Greek lodge, what I think of is like fraternities, right? Like college frats. There is different rites, Oriental, Greek. Well, I mean, I can't sponsor you, Mr. Keeps. I'm very sorry to let you know, because I have to be a member of the lodge to which you're applying. But I can, you can let them know I speak on your behalf. That may or may not help you. There are different rites, like there's Oriental rites. There may be a Greek rite, but not I can think of. Scottish rite, it is a type of Masonic rite. I'm a Scottish rite Mason. In Louisiana, for example, Scottish rite actually can go from the first degree all the way to 33rd. Most often, though, you will join the Craft Lodge first, which is the first 3 degrees. You'll either be Emulation Ritual or Preston Webb, and then you'll join Scottish Rite afterwards, and Scottish Rite. So I'm not sure to what Greek is referencing off the top of my head. Viva la Canada, indeed. Um, at the start, honestly, what I would do is when I speak to the Masonic brethren and Masonic lodges, ask them which Grand Lodge they are associated with. And you kind of move from there. But at the start, don't worry so much about rights. Just worry about how well, first, that it's a legitimate Masonic body. Just confirm their Grand Lodge. And then that you get along well with the brethren. After that, you kind of could worry more about which rite you're joining or the rites you're joining or things like that. But I would say at the start, during the application phase, the focus should be more on the brethren you're going to be hanging out with and how well you think you'll get along with them, and also how well they'll get along with you. Why does Canada not want to share? Well, Chris, I don't know. Mike, blue or red lodge? Well, when you talk about blue lodge is usually a reference to the first 3 degrees, right? When people talk about their blue lodge, usually they're talking about their first 3 degrees. Sometimes blue or red lodge can refer to Scottish Rite or York Rite lodges. In some instances, red lodge is actually referred to as York Rite lodges, though I tend not to use that term. In some cases, red lodge, like those are colloquial expressions within Freemasonry. I mean, my blue lodge I'm part of 5 lodges, but my original blue lodge was Windsor Lodge number 403, and then I joined Scottish Rite. I like turtles too, Al Gore. Who is Ichabod Crane? The Headless Horseman? Or the guy who was in the Headless Horseman? I don't know, Mike, if you saw the television show Sleepy Hollow, but it actually referenced the Freemasons, right? I thought it was really, really cool. Made us seem way cooler than we actually are. But if you get the chance to, watch Sleepy Hollow, it's on Disney Plus. The first season features 2 episodes celebrating the Freemasons. I thought that was really, really cool. So I'm a guess. So Mike, going back to your question, you could argue I'm a member of the Blue Lodge and a Red Lodge, but I'm not a big fan of those because I'm not a big fan of those. Also, in some cases, Blue Lodges are based on rituals created by kind of York Rite bodies. Red Lodges are emulation. But again, I'm not a big fan of blue or red, the distinction. I don't think it's not helpful because it's not consistent. If you were a Freemason, you could. If you're not a Freemason, you could come to refreshments afterwards. You couldn't sit in the meeting itself, apple tree, but you could join us during our refreshment. There are times when people will invite their friends or family to join in refreshment. Um, then you could not come to a meeting. You could just come to a lodge refreshments afterwards. But I mean, I've invited friends to refreshment hours in the past. The purpose of which being to, in some cases, they're interested in joining Freemasonry. Well, you would be tested, apple tree. But that's a very good point that you bring up. Just because someone says they're a Freemason, don't believe them automatically. You can ask to see a dues card. You can, do trial, strict examination, all that good jazz. There's many different ways to try to confirm whether someone is or is not a Freemason. Don't necessarily just take their word for it. Apple, I believe him. Well, there you go. I Google Greek Lodge. Oh, so it would be considered irregular, Finn. It would be considered irregular or clandestine, because that might be why I never heard of it. I mean, I've heard of co-Freemasonry, but I've never heard of Greek. Well, there's the Grand Lodge of Greece, which is legitimate. Greek Masonic. That's why I said what you want to make sure you're doing is ask them which Grand Lodge they are associated with, because that way you can look them up and see if they are recognized. And if you want to join a Greek Masonic Lodge or Greek Rite, and it's a mixed gender lodge, I mean, more power to you. Just understand that that means you would not be able to, for example, visit my Masonic Lodge, because our Masonic lodges don't recognize each other. Um, right? So it's one of those things where just make sure whatever you're joining, you understand what you're joining and how much it will impact your ability to travel. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Because again, I have no issue with someone joining any organization or group that makes them happy, including a clandestine Masonic lodge. My issue has always been if they join a clandestine Masonic lodge, but they're told it's not, it's a recognized and regular Masonic lodge, and they don't know otherwise, they are significantly limiting their ability to be part of Freemasonry, because they're significantly limiting their ability to travel um, and visit other Masonic lodges. And if you can't visit Masonic lodges, that is one of the best main parts of Freemasonry that you're missing out on. That, I mean, first of all, Chris, it is Veterans Day in the States and Remembrance Day in Canada, so my thoughts, my respect, my thanks to you for all of the, for the sacrifices you and veterans have made, um, you know, throughout history, for our safety, for our freedom, for our democracy, for all the things we care about. Yes, that's the way to put it. A clandestine lodge is not affiliated with. It's not affiliated with official Freemasonry. It's not recognized. It can call itself Masonic, and whether you feel it is or isn't Masonic is, something every member has to decide for themselves. But the one thing they cannot do is, if you're a part of a clandestine lodge, is visit recognized Masonic lodges. Um, it is not easy. I mean, it's one of those, hello, Dream Seeker. I remailed your postcard because I feel like the fact you haven't got it yet is driving me crazy. You're the last one who hasn't got their postcard yet. Everybody else has, who became a Patreon. By the way, you can become a Patreon member. Don't forget. Um, in what way, Finn? I'm not sure what that means. I mean, so joining a clandestine lodge because you want to be a Freemason, and then finding out that you can't travel and visit other lodges, I think that definitely defeats the point. But it's why you're joining something. What is the purpose? If you're joining something exclusively because you want to meet new people, make new friends, and for whatever reason, something about a clandestine lodge just speaks to you, and you have no plans on traveling or, you know, trying to grow Freemasonry in any meaningful way, you just want to hang out with people and, chat or whatever it is, then maybe that works for you. But I absolutely agree with you, Finn. If you're joining because you want to be a Freemason, you want to travel, and all of the things that comes with that, like traveling, visitation, it's crazy not to join a clandestine lodge because you can't travel and visit, and if you can't travel and visit, you're missing out a major, major, major component of what Freemasonry is. It only costs my sanity and soul. Well, I hope your sanity and your soul is restored to you, Chris. I hope you get, help if you need it. I know that there's a lot of injuries that one can suffer on the battlefield, but I also know, or during service, but I also understand that there's a lot of emotional challenges and toil that comes off of the battlefield as well and off of deployments. Um, and so, yes, I think everybody should spare a thought for Chris, and I hope that Chris maybe gets some help if you need it, some people to talk to. Well, but there's not so that I mean that gets into spirit a really complicated issue because technically you could argue there's three different categorizations. There's regular, irregular, and clandestine, right? So, like for example, the Grand Orient of France, or if I recall correctly, or like the Philippines. There's two Masonic bodies in the Philippines. One is recognized by Ontario, one isn't. But the one that isn't, they still have, it's not that they have no Masonic connections with other lodges around the world. It's just not with. You can join an irregular Masonic lodge and still be a part of and travel to Freemasonry. Um, your options may be less though. It's just really tricky, right? Because you're getting into these ideas of recognition. Honestly, at the start when you're joining, a lot of this stuff isn't important. What you need to do is just ask them which Grand Lodge are you associated with. Take a moment to contact that Grand Lodge, ask them if they're recognized, and then you can kind of decide from there. But don't spend too much time worrying about this stuff because honestly, for most entered apprentices, it doesn't really affect you at all. Um, the red poppy is in honor of Remembrance Day or to commemorate Remembrance Day here in Canada. Like your Veterans Day, the poppy is our symbol for that. Canada, UK, I think Australia also uses them, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Freemasonry does not have blood on its hands, unless you count the blood of the operative Freemasons working on temples and buildings who probably cut themselves working and chipping away at stone, I'm sure. But other than that, no literal or metaphorical. Um, you're not. I mean, well, the goalposts do. I mean, they don't change. You have. I mean, I guess they do in some ways. You have your committee of recognition that meets every year and tries to provide advice to Grand Lodges on which Masonic bodies and organizations to accept as being legitimate or to refuse to accept. But it's not. I mean, the goalposts don't necessarily change. There's a specific set of rules and criteria which they follow, which I volume of the sacred law, territorial sovereignty, following the landmarks, if I recall correctly, are the three. And based on that, they'll create a list of Masonic organizations which they will or will not consider legitimate. Um, Remembrance Day. So it's like American Veterans Day, right? To remember the sacrifices of our veterans, whether it be World War One, World War Two, Korean, recent conflicts, Afghanistan, peacekeeping missions in the Boer War, to commemorate and honor our veterans. We actually had our Windsor Masonic Memorial Service on Sunday in honor of the Masons who passed away and Masons who served, including those who were killed in the line of duty, and all the Masons who served overseas, and as well as just all the Canadians in general who served our country. And this morning at 11, we had our local Windsor Remembrance Day service. I don't think it's about celebrating. I mean, celebrating is definitely not the right word, but I'd say commemoration, right? And honor those who chose to serve for their country, I think is a good thing. Right. I don't think I would use the term, again, I don't think I would use the term celebrate. I think I used that term earlier in this stream. I said celebrating Remembrance Day, and that was not the right term to use. Commemorate, denote, honor, those would all be better terms. Which is fine, Chris, and certainly you don't have to, right? And I can understand people wanting to kind of, I mean, I don't know what it would be like to be a vet. I'm sure, like I said, there's an incredible amount of honor and pride, but also an incredible amount of challenges and emotional turmoil that comes from service. Um, but I will say again, for me, I thank you for your service, and I thank you for doing something that, I mean, I have no legs. I could never sign up, but even if I had legs, I'm a wuss. So nothing but my respect to you for being willing to sign up and serve your country. I agree with Dream Seeker. We would not have the freedoms we do were it not for Freemasons. Um, so we're not for Freemasons. We're not for veterans. Excuse me. We would not have the freedoms we have were it not for veterans. I keep saying Freemasons because of this stream. I will say I think Freemasonry has also helped to encourage some of our freedoms, but on this day in particular, I agree with Dream Seeker. We would not have the freedoms we do were it not for our veterans. Um, and as Finn says, that's exactly the right way to put it. It's about honoring the service, not um, not propping up wars. Um, right? Those are, whether a country goes to war, not goes to war, whether you agree with the decision of a country to engage in military actions or not. That is a political question. Everybody has to decide that for themselves. But I would say the people who are being deployed, the veterans, the military personnel who find themselves being deployed within battles, within military actions, within wars, they're not making the political decisions, and they deserve our respect and they deserve to be honored. However, we feel about the political decisions behind the battles and behind the wars or the actions, right? I think it's insane to blame a soldier for the military decisions of the government. Um, we talked about this before, but it's interesting. It's interesting how in the 1920s and the 1950s, Freemasonry exploded in membership numbers, and much of that was a direct result of veterans returning um, from World War I and World War II and wanting to continue to find support and continue to find brotherhood within the communities at home, as well as to continue serving their communities and serving their countries. And Freemasonry was considered in many ways an act of service. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that completely, Apple, but I don't completely disagree either. There is an issue with an entrenched older age of politicians and leadership. That's very true. Freemasonry as well, and I'm glad that your son got help, Dream Seeker. Well, Chris, I can understand that, but I hope you also find some things, in your home without the feeling of war that can give you a feeling of peace and camaraderie and brotherhood. Maybe even Freemasonry. Who knows? I did want to mention earlier on in the stream, I was talking about the idea of the grand unification or the grand theory of housing. This idea that housing costs and the inability for many to own homes is affecting our civic institutions as well as civil institutions. I found this article. I've said it a million times, you cannot separate the success of a Masonic, so you cannot separate the conditions of a country, whether they be economic, social, political, from the conditions of Freemasonry within that country. And we consider housing. Just consider this note from Tyler Cohen on November 9th, 2025. Many developed countries face low and falling birth rates, potentially affected by rising costs of housing. Existing evidence on the fertility housing cost relationship typically uses kind of like it, Dan, Born for War. Chat is acting up like not all the messages are coming through. Because that happens sometimes, Apple Tree, that not all the messages come through. Just keep trying, I guess. Existing evidence on the fertility housing cost relationship typically uses geographic variation, raising selection issues, neglects unit size, and says little about policy. To progress on these fronts, I first specify a dynamic model of joint housing fertility choice, allowing choices over location and house size, estimated using U.S. Census Bureau data. I extend micro-moment techniques both to circumvent data constraints and to incorporate heterogeneous residuals, which can prevent misspecification. Housing choice estimates confirm a quantity-quality model prediction. Large families are more cost sensitive, and so rising housing costs disincentivize fertility. To study the causal effect of rising housing costs on fertility, I vary them directly with the model, finding that rising costs since 1990 are responsible for 11% fewer children, 51% of the total fertility rate decline between 2000 and 2010, and 7 percentage points fewer younger families in the 2010s. Policy counterfactuals indicate that a supply shift for large units generates 2.3 times more births than an equal cost shift for small units. Family-friendly housing is the more important policy lever. When you have less housing available or less large housing available, you're going to have smaller families as a consequence. However, by the same token, will you also have smaller social circles, a smaller social life, because so much of your free time will be dedicated to either additional work and additional income to pay for your house, or just staying at home, not engaging in work, sorry, not engaging in things to save money. When it comes to Freemasonry, I mean, even just, I've known Masons who couldn't make it to Masonic meetings because they couldn't afford the gas to get from their place to the lodge, let alone paying their yearly dues, whatever it might be. So, I don't know necessarily that I know what the answers are. What I do know is if a housing market that's inaccessible to young people is resulting in them choosing to have smaller families or no families, is resulting in them choosing to spend more time focused on money, either making money or saving money, and is resulting in them choosing less of a community-based outlook on life, especially if they're not owning property and they don't feel connected to their community, but rather a transient lifestyle in which they're renting and in which they feel they're not connected to their community. Are they going to be interested in Freemasonry, which requires taking time away from income generating activities, which can mean an out cost or an outlay of expenses, and which requires some sense of being rooted within or being part of a community. If you're willing to say, I'm not going to have a larger family and put your family on hold, by definition, you would be expected to put Freemasonry on hold. Because one of the things you always hear them saying is, within Freemasonry, right, is family, then Freemasonry. So by definition, if your family growth is being put on hold, then so too will your Masonic growth or Masonic involvement be put on hold. Finn, yes. I mean, again, this is coming from Sager and Jetty. Well, this came from Tyler Cohen, but he's been talking a lot about it, and he's been saying, look, the crises we're seeing in the economy, the crises we're seeing in the social fabric in America specifically, he's saying a lot of it comes from this idea of an inability for younger people to enter the housing market. Here's an interesting thing, right? My favorite, this chart, median age of U.S. home buyers since 1981. The median home buyer age rose from 39 in 2005 to 59 in 2025. 20 years over 20 years, it's literally the same people buying the homes 2 decades later. So again, if you're a first-time home buyer, you want to be a first-time home buyer, and it's since the 1980s has become increasingly more challenging and difficult to own a home. Where's your priorities? Where's your effort? Where's your work going to be? On where will it be focused? It's going to be focused not on civic organizations. It's going to be focused on making money, however it is that you can. Speaking of making money, if you guys would be so kind to hit the like and subscribe button and do even a 99-cent super chat, would be much appreciated. Well, I don't think home is a trap, Apple Tree. I mean, some people view it that way. I think for most people, home is a sense of security. It's the way they grow wealth. It's what they were taught to strive for. It is in many parts of America, I would say all of America actually, home ownership was considered a sign of success, a sign of caring about the community, a sign of being part of the community. And so the point is, if you feel you don't have that, if you feel you don't have the capacity to own a home, you feel you don't have that ability to generate wealth, you feel you're not connected to your community, then all the downstream effects of that is going to be less involvement in civic organizations, smaller or no families, potentially more willingness to commit crimes or more deaths of despair, right? People feel connected, and home ownership is one of the ways that people feel connected to their neighbors and their communities. I would argue, and some would argue, it is the most important way for people to feel connected therein. Adam, a house on the Canadian. That's interesting. I mean, what I will say is I can't speak for. By the way, welcome, Adam. I can't speak for the Canada, the Ontario, New York, Niagara Falls divide. What I will say is 250,000. Are you using the same currency? Canadian or US currency? Because 250 US is probably 400. Hold on just one sec. US to CAD. Yeah, it's about 100,000 more. But I know, I mean, to my understanding, on average, housing is actually more expensive. Well, no. Basically, housing costs are going up everywhere. Whether it's more expensive on the average in the United States or Canada, I'm not sure. Is housing more expensive? Housing is currently more expensive in Canada than the USA. Yeah. I guess that would make more sense. Um, because I don't think we engage in the building. So, but again, it goes to, I mean, Freemasonry in Canada is suffering substantially. Um, right? Freemasonry in Canada is suffering substantially. I think the housing issues that exist within the States, you see them existing in Canada as well. Actually, you see them, I think, existing even more so in Canada for a variety of different reasons. But the issue remains the same, right? Which is, again, if you cannot own a home or you feel like home ownership is out of your reach, are you going to be interested in joining a bunch of different, or even any civic group or civic organization? Um, I mean, you got right now Donald Trump talking about a 50-year mortgage. Some people will. Some people will die before they pay the mortgage back if you're talking about a 50-year mortgage. Um, Welcome, Mystical. Thanks for being here. I feel like it's been a minute. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Or Apple Tree can just inherit everything. Though a lot of people don't have that option. Michael Moore, good afternoon. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining. I don't know, we were talking about this on the stream. I don't know if you heard me talking about the grand unified theory of housing. This idea that as housing, as house and home ownership, property ownership seems more and more out of reach for the average American and average Canadian. That can explain a lot of different factors, including the struggles that Freemasonry both is facing and has faced. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Oh, 50, I mean, I'm not, again, I speak for myself personally. Um, right? I can't speak for anybody else. I can speak for me. When I can say, just personally, I think a 50-year mortgage is insane. It's absolutely crazy. And again, I'm not, but it goes to a more fundamental point, which is, again, if you as a Freemason, not as a Freemason, if you as a young, this applies to women too, but we're going to say young men for this stream. If you as a young man feel like home ownership is out of reach, or feel like in order to own property, you need to spend all of your time working, all of your time earning funds, all of your time, getting multiple jobs, or saving, or you're putting your family on hold, you want to grow a family, but you're trying to get a bigger house. How much are you really going to be thinking about or concerned with Freemasonry? in those circumstances. So I guess keep those in mind, or keep that in mind. Um, and it's one of those things where this is where Freemasonry needs to reconsider how it approaches the future. If it's not willing to provide a professional component, a way for Freemasons to earn a living through the craft, how long can it survive if you have brethren taking 2 jobs, 3 jobs, taking 1 job but working all the overtime they can in order to pay for their housing, right? Um, yeah, no, I don't know of anybody who supports. I don't know of anybody who supports a 50-year mortgage. I'm sure there are some, but I can't. For me personally, I can't understand the logic of it. Trump is. I do not believe Trump is a Freemason. I've never seen any evidence, Nigerian Nightmare, that Trump is in fact a Freemason. I could be wrong, obviously, but I've never seen, like I said, never seen any evidence that he is. So I do not believe that he is. All right, Nigerian Nightmare is once again trolling. Let me just put you in a timeout, good sir. Yeah, no, like I said, I agree with Michael. I've never seen any evidence that he is. I am always super careful to say 100% because it is possible there are some people who are and just, you know, prefer to keep it incredibly hidden. But I've not seen any evidence that he is, and I suspect people would know that he was. It would be obvious because he does not seem the type of person who cannot stop talking about anything. He would, share all of the secrets in a heartbeat. Is he Michael Moore? Because I've heard a lot of different theories on that. My personal belief is he is, right? I know what happened. Obviously, he was presented with the plaque and made a Mason on site by the Grand Lodge, North Carolina. I thought it was South Carolina for some reason. North Carolina on January 19th during the like when he was meeting dignitaries and special guests in the White House. But first, I understand that some people, I think Chris Hodop is one, who's argued that it's actually impossible to make a Mason on site, which I've heard different theories about that. I've also heard some people theorize that, um, you know, uh, uh, Joe Biden never like accepted the membership because you got to understand with I mean, as someone who interned in the office of the Prime Minister, interned with Stephen Harper. Um, I've been part of those lines where you're in a line with like 50, 100 other people. You go up, you shake the Prime Minister's hand. If you have something to give him, like a plaque, a gift, whatever it is, you give that to him, um, and then you get your picture taken. Um, doesn't always necessarily. So was South Carolina, okay, doesn't necessarily mean that he accepted it. Having said that, when people ask me if Joe Biden is a Freemason, usually I say yes, with those caveats. Um, because believe me, Joe Biden gets not anymore, probably. Though even still, if he does a public appearance or a speech, I'm sure he gets something. But Joe Biden got a ton of things like that, of gifts, of plaques, of you know, tokens of appreciation. It's kind of part of being a politician. People show up and give you these things, right? So long as it's within whatever the requirements are under the law. Because I forget what it is, but there's any gifts or tokens you receive has to be under a certain amount of value. Um, Inflation does push up the price of gold. I would say inflation pushes up the prices of assets in general. Um, so again, I would agree with Michael Moore. I would say Joe Biden is in fact a Freemason, made a Freemason. He would be the one Freemason to be made a Mason during his term of office. In fact, one day before his term of office ended, because it took place January 19th. He's not the exclusive presidential Mason to be made a Mason on site. Taft was made a Mason on site. So there you go. Well, I think it went up this in 2008, if I recall correctly, during the housing crisis. I could be mistaken. We'll see what's going to happen. I think it's. I think a lot of people are kind of holding their breath right now about the Great Depression, maybe. I think people are holding their breath right now with the economy. A lot of it seems to be resting on the shoulders of AI companies. We'll see what happens. I think, to me, the key is, however it is that you are feeling about the economy, whatever the economy is, if you can find purpose and reason and belief that things will be better, then I think things can be better. I think a lot of times what we're struggling with is not so much a lack economic challenges, it's a lack of purpose. There are a lot of people who've gone through incredibly tough economic times, tougher than we're in right now, but managed to make it through in better condition because they had a sense of purpose and a belief that they were all in it together. If you look at the 1930s, 40s, you know, for a lot of people, things were quite terrible, but you had a growth in unions, you had a growth in social and civic groups, and people found a way to make it through, you know, because yes, things are bad, but we're all in this together. I think so, Rondo. I mean, unless, again, it's very possible that, and this isn't like about mental acuity, this is just, it's very possible Joe Biden didn't necessarily know the gift he was receiving at the time, because again, it could be hundreds of people in this line, you're shaking hands, you're being given special items and gifts and whatever it is. So he might not have known, but I think he was of sound mind if he would, you know. Actually, I've said it before, but of my lifetime, Joe Biden might be my favorite president. 30 to 40 is war and resets. Well, definitely, there's a major argument that what brought America out of the Great Depression was World War II, World War II manufacturing, specifically in, you know, the Rust Belt in Michigan, Wisconsin. Barack Obama was your favorite? I didn't mind Barack Obama. I thought he was, I'll take him over what we got now, obviously, but I think I prefer what Joe Biden did, especially because I kind of in some ways grade Joe Biden on a little bit of a curve because his political climate was so different than Barack Obama. Like his political climate was insanely challenging. He came into office after January 6th, right? Just think about trying to lead a country after you've just had an attempted insurrection. If you're talking historically, Finn, then my favorite presidents, a few of whom were Freemasons, George Washington, FDR, LBJ, and Joe Biden. And you could argue all of those were Freemasons. And Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. And he was a Freemason as well. So maybe there is something about Masonic philosophy that engenders or encourages good administration and good leadership. We're going to give this another few minutes. Please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button if you're new. Any thoughts on Freemasonry? Positive, negative, or neutral? I'd love to hear them. I wasn't a big fan of the drone strikes either. The Wall Street bailout, I don't know how I feel about that. I have very mixed feelings about it. But I think the optics of it were brutal and have led to a lot of the problems we see in 2025, where the optics of it was such that people um, um, felt at that point that the government was actually not on the side of the quote unquote average citizen, but rather on the side of big business and Wall Street and banks, which resulted in a level of disillusionment about the system. And unfortunately, people such as Donald Trump were able to capitalize on that disillusionment. I don't. I think he. I think he knew where he was more than people say. I'm not as convinced. I think he lost his ability to communicate effectively, but I don't think that is equivalent with losing your ability to govern. I definitely think he was too old to campaign, though. Right? I think campaigning and governing are different skill sets. There's overlap, but not completely. And I think that certainly he was too old to effectively campaign. I have no idea what you're saying, Colonizer 420. I missed you. Well, I missed you too. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. Um, to everybody watching this, it's not too late to hit that subscribe button and that like button if you're new to the stream. Um, well, fair enough. Like I said, I don't think he was that. He's one of my favorite presidents. Like I said, so I don't think he was that bad. But this is just my personal opinion. I do think he should have not ran a second time. November 23rd, I'll be installed as monarch. Congratulations, Michael Moore. I'm sure you'll be an excellent monarch. I'm sure it's going to be an excellent, excellent year for you. December 6th is actually my lodge's installation, and I am the installing master. Yes, I prefer the pick of you to the pick of a swastika. So I appreciate you doing that. You're not wrong, Mr. Keeps. There's a fair point to be made there. But I'm not as convinced it was a question of stamina. I think it was a question of, and again, there's overlap, right? If you can't effectively communicate during a debate, how effective can you communicate at 3 in the morning if you need to decide if you're going to order, some military action that needs to be done, right? So effective communication on a campaign trail, it can be, there's a fair reason to not want, if somebody has poor communication skills for whatever reason on a campaign, that can give you pause when it comes to their ability to govern, because you could argue that when you're governing, the ability to effectively and clearly communicate is equally important, if not more so. So that's a fair point as well, right? I think it's unfortunate that he, like I said, even though he's one of my favorites, I don't think he should have run again. I just think he was not at, whether it's age or pick your reason, I don't think he was able to effectively communicate or effectively campaign. And he had also kind of implied that he was not going to run for a second term when he ran in the first term. I don't think he ever said it directly, but there is a pretty strong implication that he wasn't going to run for more than one term. So a lot of people felt that he went back on his word with that. But again, the CHIPS Act, the CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Act, support for unions, even though I do have some concerns about unions, reflexive concerns, I'm more supportive of them now than I was in the past. The Inflation Reduction Act, his work distributing the vaccine. There's a lot I was greatly impressed with his presidency. And again, it's one of those things where it's fascinating. When I said like all my favorite presidents, and some of these were my favorite presidents before I was a Freemason or knew what Freemasonry was, but George Washington, FDR, LBJ, Joe Biden, uh, Teddy Roosevelt, they were all Freemasons. So maybe that says something about my beliefs and my values that apparently they apply, you know, that I had even before I was a Freemason. I definitely wouldn't say that, Mr. Keeps. That's very unkind. Colonizer, what is your question? Yeah, I think LBJ. I don't think LBJ gets the respect he deserves for being a great president, partially because of Vietnam, and that's fair. That was an absolute gong show. I think almost everybody in 2025 would agree. But getting the Civil Rights Act passed was absolutely incredible, I thought, or I think. And I don't know, I don't think JFK could have got it passed. Um, I think, um, I don't think JFK could have got the Civil Rights Act passed. I think, uh, being a Texas Democrat, I think LBJ, just his ability to politic was pretty incredible. He was an EA, but he's still a Mason. I mean, I consider EAs Freemasons. I know there are some super old school people, Masons, who think, you're not a Mason unless you're a Master Mason. I think that's very silly. I think it's perfectly acceptable to be an EA. Honestly, I know some entered apprentices who are more dedicated and work harder at Freemasonry than some Master Masons. I know some EAs who do more for Freemasonry than 33rd degrees. In terms of they show up for events, they help set up, they help tear down, they attend lodge meetings. And again, this is from the Canadian perspective. And if you're an EA but also the president of the United States, and before that, the vice president, like I'm fine with you staying as an EA. This isn't like back in the day when you could be the vice president and get your Master Mason degree, like Teddy Roosevelt did. I think being vice president in the 60s was very different than being vice president in 1901. Um, I definitely don't believe that, Mr. Keeps. I would very strongly disagree with that one. I think that's kind of silly. Um, I do not know what TMAU is, but welcome, Titch. Thank you for being here. Yeah, and I think, look, a lot of people can, and again, I can completely respect somebody who says I can never support MLK or sorry, MLK, geez. Everybody should support MLK. I could never support LBJ because of the Vietnam War. That's fine, and I can respect that position. But to me, the Civil Rights Act was such a monumental piece of legislation, and I think it had longer term positive effects on the country than the Vietnam War had long term negative effects. Although you could argue that's not the case in terms of what the Vietnam War did for the disillusionment of the American citizen on institutions, the loss of life, the economic impact. So there's a very decent argument both directions. But again, for me, I think a lot of how you judge a president needs to be based on legislation and the legislation they passed. And for that reason, LBJ is one of my faves. He may have. I'm not sure if he did or not. I don't know a lot about JFK's policies um, as it related to Vietnam. I will say one of my favorite movies is 13 Days about the Cuban Missile Crisis and how JFK reacted and what he did at that time. It got me thinking of, or it reminded me, Or a movie I recently saw called A House of Dynamite reminded me a lot of that movie. Both are about nuclear strike, potential nuclear war. Um, it also made me sad in some ways watching 13 Days because you think about the government and the politicians of the time versus what we have in 2025. I don't know if I'd be as comfortable with, let's say, this is just my opinion, with, let's say, a Donald Trump dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis as I would be with a JFK or an LBJ for that matter. That's a fair point, Finn. That's a very fair point. You're not wrong about that. But I don't know how much of that you can blame on LBJ and how much of that you can blame on a culture of the time that decided it was going to question basically any or every kind of understanding or dogma it was going to question. And I think that's dangerous, right? Because one of the dogmas was soldiers and military veterans are heroes, and I think they should be considered heroes. Or if not heroes, at least should be considered as, primarily men and women as well, but men who were willing to sacrifice, ultimately, potentially their lives, were willing to sacrifice their health, were willing to sacrifice their comfort to fight for those back home. And whatever you think about the war or the wars in which they're fighting, that should not reflect negatively on the troops themselves. Um, but I think the 60s was just a time when people were questioning everything. And as a result, a lot of that turned into bitterness and anger, resentments. And then you get those things, right? Which is also one of the reasons why Vietnam veterans returning from war were not joining Masonic lodges to the same extent that World War II and World War One veterans, when they were come back from the war, would join Masonic lodges or their wars. Some of them, yeah, a lot of them were given that option. I remember watching Tour of Duty when I was a kid, and I think there was a character in Tour of Duty, if I recall correctly, who chose to go to Vietnam because if he didn't, he would go to jail. I think he was a character in Tour of Duty, if I recall correctly. Um, it did make me think one idea I had, or one thought I had, when I watch movies like 13 Days, A House of Dynamite, any movies in which there are negotiations taking place between government officials and government agents, especially these high stakes negotiations, it got me thinking about what do we think as a society? Like, I was curious if, let's say, Bobby Kennedy and the Russian minister in 13 Days, let's imagine they were both Freemasons or knew that each other were Freemasons. Um, would that have affected the negotiations? Would it have made the negotiations go smoother? If both the president of the States and, in Russia, if they were both Masons, would that have made negotiations go smoother? Would that keep the world safer? I have zero idea. I mean, it's an interesting thought experiment. However, when you also think about it, George Washington and King George were both Freemasons, didn't stop the Revolutionary War from happening. There have been many examples in history of Masons being on both sides of a conflict, sometimes at the leadership level, sometimes being the actual heads of government and heads of states. So I don't know, but I did wonder about that. I'd be really curious to see if we could do like I don't even know, some type of podcast about how many times during conflicts were leaders on opposite sides of a conflict both Freemasons, or what were the numbers, and does it make a difference? Is it possible that battles and wars in which there are significant numbers of Masons represented? Are those less bloody, more bloody? I have no clue, but I'd be curious. Please take a moment, by the way, to hit that like and subscribe button, as always. Thank you for joining. We'll give this another maybe 10 minutes or so. I will be back on at 1 a.m. Don't forget, you can do a 99-cent super chat if you are so desired. I remember you from 12 hours ago, Pro Rainbow. How's it going? Thank you for joining once again. I hope that you're doing well. Well, I always do my streams 1 p.m. and then I go usually a couple hours, but this one was really fun, so I went a little bit longer than normal. But yeah, it depends. That's right. I'm a cool guy. I'm afraid of many things, but um, not afraid of being on a little bit later than normal. Well, Finn, what you're talking about there are called modes of recognition. And that is absolutely the case. I'm not going to describe what they are, but there are modes of recognition and signs that we can do to demonstrate to others that we are a Freemason. You got to join to learn what those are. Again, those are not the purpose behind modes of recognition. I mean, they date back to our stonemason days, right? Hello, Hamdi Seuss. Back in the day when you were a stonemason, you weren't going to carry around a dues card or some type of electronic verification in the 15th century. So if you wanted to prove to another stonemason that you were well trained, that you were a stonemason, and that you knew your trade, you had modes of recognition, grips, tokens, passwords, that would prove your skill and ability and that you were a legitimate mason. And it was a way to protect trade secrets. We took those within Freemasonry and we applied them to ourselves as a way to be able to demonstrate to others that we're a Freemason. And really, it goes back to the example I give all the time of the family recipe. It's not that there's anything nefarious, rather, maintaining these rituals, maintaining these modes of recognition, maintaining their privacy, is a way for us to maintain the bonds of brotherhood through shared experiences and shared knowledge. Hello, Poland. Hello from Canada. I hope you're doing well. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Hamdi Seuss, please hit like and subscribe as well. If you have any questions about Freemasonry, please let me know. Well, you shouldn't. I mean, that would be up to the police officer. I mean, that would be no different than if you and the police officer both played sports on the same football team, or knew each other some way, and he pulls you over for a ticket and he decides to let you off with a warning, which I'm sure can happen. Or if, I don't know, he's a fan of Star Trek and he looks in your car and you've got a Spock bobblehead on your car, he may let you off with a warning. He shouldn't. right? We as Freemasons, first of all, we shouldn't be breaking the law, including speeding. But if we are, then we shouldn't expect fellow Masons, a police officer, to let us off with a warning. Not saying it can't happen. Again, if you find out that the person you pulled over is somebody you know from somewhere or a friend of a friend, I'm sure many police officers will give warnings. Um, but it shouldn't happen, right? One of the things, again, that we're taught within Freemasonry is not to break the law and not to support others, even our brethren who break the law. Shoot, Spirit of Justice, what is your question? I'll do my best to answer. I can't make any promises, but I'll do my best. Could you shout out? I don't know who they are. Noel McCoy and Bertie Lavery. I'm not sure who they are. But I guess I'll shout them out. But Caden, if I do that, you got to give me a 99-cent super chat and hit like and subscribe. Could you? I mean, it depends. Every Mason kind of decides that for themselves. I certainly could not sit in an unrecognized Masonic lodge. So if an unrecognized Masonic lodge is having a meeting, I could not sit in or be part of the meeting. But if they're having a barbecue or a social function or anything to which the public is invited, or even if I just want to look in their building, I have zero issue doing so, and I have zero issue with any Mason doing so. There are some who disagree and who think if they're unrecognized, you can't even talk to them, let alone attend a social function. I think that's baloney, but that's my own opinion on that. But the one thing that is clear is I would not be able to attend one of their lodge meetings. Right. I've had some great times at some barbecues held by Prince Hall lodges. They're not having an official meeting, but they're having a barbecue. Family, friends, the public are all there, and they're a great group of guys. I'm going to give this another couple minutes, then we'll be ending this stream. I'm going to be looking more into this idea of housing, the grand unified theory of housing, but like I said, I think there's a lot onto it. One interesting poll question to ask would be, if you are a Freemason, do you own your own home? I'm wondering what the numbers are, and if we could even find history of that. My bet is in the 1950s, and when I say own your own home, I mean, are you paying a mortgage for your own home? Right? Are you paying a mortgage? My assumption is in the 1950s and the 1920s, the majority, certainly in the 1950s, through the 60s and 70s, I would be willing to bet the majority of Freemasons actually owned or had a mortgage on a home. Whereas starting in the 80s through the 2020s, my suspicion is the number of Freemasons who actually owned, or number of Freemasons who actually own their own home, dropped significantly. My suspicion in 2025, this is an estimate, is probably less than 50% of Freemasons. Actually, no, because our numbers trend older. My suspicion is if you're a Freemason and you're over 50, you own your own home. If you're under 50, it's probably 50-50. I don't think I know Nick Hertz. The name doesn't ring a bell. Unless I am... Shaolin Grandmaster? A preacher? I think every human should have housing, however they get it. I don't think every human um, should necessarily needs to own a home. There are a lot of people who find a lot more joy, you know, living out of vans and traveling around, which I think is fine, right? I think the issue is if that is what you want, you're probably not going to be that interested in Freemasonry. I'm the exception. I love to travel and I love Freemasonry. I think for a lot of people, even though you could argue, and I've argued before, to be a Freemason is to be a traveler, I think in the 50s and the 20s, when you had those Masonic boom periods, so much of joining was based on people, again, it was veterans returning from war, wanting to find camaraderie, but also wanting to feel a part of a community, to feel rooted in a community. They have their, house, which they may have got through the GI Bill, by the way, but they have their house, they own their home, they're paying a mortgage, they have equity, and now as an expression of that equity, they join a Masonic lodge. Um, the idea of a nomadic Freemason, it's interesting in theory. You could argue it's more accurate as to what Freemasonry once was, but it would not reflect Freemasonry for the last 100 years or so. Um, Maybe 200 years. It's still cheaper than rent, true. I just found Nick Hurst on socials. Son of King Jesus, husband to Chelsea, dad of Hudson. He's got 32. He doesn't really post much. I don't know much about him. I don't know if he's pro Freemasonry, anti Freemasonry, if he doesn't talk about it at all. Absolutely, Finn. Just like you said, what better way? You join a Masonic, sorry, you get a home, you're paying a mortgage on it, you're not leaving anytime soon. You better be part of that community. And what better way than joining a lodge? Um, well, travel is so important. Like I think being a Freemason, part of that is being a traveler. But it's travel with the understanding you return to a home, you return to a rooted place. Um, how is a mortgage a fraud? Mortgages seem like the standard way by which one owns a home. Some do. I think most people, I mean, I would say a 50-year mortgage starts to feel a bit like a trap. 30 years seems pretty reasonable to me. Mike, I have no idea what that means, but that seems highly doubtful to me. Um, I don't know by what you're crediting, right? You're clearly paying them every month. Back when I had a mortgage, um, the money came out of my account, so somebody was getting it. I mean, to me, I've always thought, but that just could be because of how I grew up with it, right? To me, 30 years always seemed reasonable. But that's what I always understood and grew up with, is the idea of a 30-year mortgage. I will look up legal names fraud, though. That sounds like some free man of the land type stuff to me, which I don't, not a big proponent of or not a fan of. So you're saying that I have money in an account of which I'm unaware? I'm going to end this stream soon. I do hope, once again, if you're just joining, you'll hit like and subscribe. I would truly appreciate it. I'll be back on 1 a.m. And yeah. Well, that's how everything works, right? Not everything. I shouldn't say that. That's how loans work in general. Someone's, giving you the money, or not giving you the money per se. Someone's giving you the asset, and you're paying it back, whatever that asset may be. And hopefully, what you're doing is, um, taking out loans that have decent interest rates, not screwing yourself. There's no real money. Ah, you're one of those. Well, Mike, I gotta disagree with you on that one. Obviously, I mean, even gold is not a type of real money. I mean, any value that we impute into anything ultimately is not real. It's the decision of the individuals trading the currency, whether they're trading the gold, whether they're trading gold, pieces of paper, diamonds, goats. At the end of the day, the value within which it is imbued is between two people and what they choose to value it as. I mean, there's nothing stopping me from going to my local store and offering them this cup in exchange for food. It's just a question of do they accept this cup or not? It's the same argument behind cryptocurrency, right? Um, Gold has, the reasons why it made sense to use as a medium of value for obvious reasons, right? It is not reactive, so it's not going to blow up on you. It's not corrosive. It's not going to rust as quickly as other metals. You can check it easily to confirm it's real. Um, it's solid at room temperature. Um, so there's a lot of reasons why it made sense and was convenient to use as a storage of value. But the amount of value you place in, let's say, a bar of gold, at the end of the day, that is all based on agreement as well. Um, Even with silver, it's all kind of based on what people are thinking and what people choose to believe um, its value is. And then it just becomes, when you're trying to figure out which metal to use, which items to use, it's just a matter of what is the most convenient based on certain characteristics, right? Based on certain standards. It's why, for example, if you're on an island and there's no gold, you may decide to use seashells as a medium of value because maybe there's a lot of seashells around, right? Um, Gold also has industrial uses, as does copper, right? I mean, I think my whole point is this idea of like there's real and fake currency. To me, by its nature, no currency is quote unquote real, right? Rather, currency, when it comes to being a store of value, it is just dependent on how people view that currency and what they value and what they choose to value. I would not be taking financial advice from Mike. Pay your electric bills. I don't want anybody to be in the dark. Well, I think America has most of the gold in the world, right? If I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Um, yeah, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it because I don't want to get sued. Pay your bills. I mean, yes, I'm insured, but still, pay your bills, for heaven's sakes. Well, I'm a philosophical fella. We in Freemasonry are taught to, consider things from a philosophical point of view. Currency isn't a holder of value, it's a medium. Well, I would say, I mean, you could argue, by the way, you could argue it's both, right? Like, yes, money is a medium of exchange, but if I have a $20 bill, that's also holding value, right? The amount of value it holds will depend on rate of inflation and economic conditions and a million other things. It might be worth more, might be worth less day in, day out. Over time, it'll probably be worth less because money tends to depreciate in value. However, gold is the same thing, right? Yes, it's a holder of value, a gold bar, but if you own a gold bar today and it's worth $1,000, tomorrow it could very well be worth $500. The next day, 1,200, right? The amount of value within the asset, whether it's a $20 bill or a piece of gold, that value will change. The what won't change is the uses for it outside of transactional purposes. So the gold will always be useful in industrial work. It will always be useful to make jewelry out of. It'll always have certain uses. It's like wood, right? You can own a whole bunch of timber and lumber and wood, and you can hold on to it for its value in the hopes of one day selling it for a greater value, or you can hold on to it for its uses outside of exchange, like building a house, starting a fire, whatever it might be. But money is no different. I mean, in theory, you can hold on to money for the hopes of exchanging it for value, or you can hold on to money because you want to put it on your wall because, like, I don't know, you collect money. You're a collector, or you want to burn it because you just want to show how rich you are. I don't know. The point is, everything everything you could argue can be both a holder of value or a medium of exchange, depending on your purposes with it. Um, Finn is correct. That's why, again, home ownership was considered the mark of success for so many years. Aristotle, welcome, Aristotle. Thank you for being here. Please hit like and subscribe um, to the stream. I am not trying to return to the gold standard. I don't think we should return to the gold standard, but other people want to, and hey, that's fine. Please hit like, please hit subscribe. Let me know if you have any thoughts on Freemasonry. Um, Captain, I don't know if it always goes up in value. I would say tangible assets probably over time go up in value, but so do stocks for that matter, as a general rule, right? If you look at it historically, like within every presidential term, the stock market reaches its highest point ever. Stocks seem to go up over time as well. Again, don't take investment advice from me. For heaven's sakes, talk to your banker, talk to a professional. Would I rather have land or gold? I would rather have gold, but that's because I'm one who loves to travel, and I feel like if I'm invested in gold, I can travel easier. If invested in land, I kind of am more stuck. Well, I have bad news for Mike. According to the wonderful robots at Google, legal name fraud is conspiracy theory and a bunch of baloney. What is the legal definition of money? I know what Aristotle described as money many centuries ago, but I would not describe that as a legal definition of currency. Welcome to Made in the USA. Silver, gold, plus real assets. But again, what can you do with a piece of gold that you cannot do with a $20 bill? If I gave you a piece of gold that was of $20 in value, or if I gave you a piece of gold that was valued at $20 and I gave you a $20 bill, what could you do with the piece of gold that you could not do with the $20 bill? I mean, you could turn the gold into jewelry or use it for industrial purposes. You're probably not going to be able to use it to purchase anything at the store. You're probably going to need to use a $20 bill for that. So it's what is the purpose of the asset? Sorry, IJ, I do not know to what you are referring, but thank you for being here. I'm going to actually see if I can translate that quickly. I have no idea what a black law dictionary is, but it sounds like the dark web. It sounds nefarious. Sounds nefarious to me. Well, that's a good point as well, right? You could argue if I have, $5 million worth of lumber and I have $1 million in cash, the $1 million is actually more valuable to me than the 5 million in timber. If I'm in construction or anything like that, it's different. But if I'm just me and somebody in a will offers me $5 million in timber or $1 million in just money, that 5 million in timber probably becomes a liability. It probably becomes a white elephant, right? And that'll probably cost me more to maintain and try to sell this than it's worth. Whereas if 1 million in cash, at least I would know what to do with it. I'd have a better sense of understanding how to use it and save it and store it. Many assets become liabilities; they become white elephants. So, right. And again, it's even if I had, let's say, $100 in gold and $20 in cash, the $100 in gold might not be that useful to me if I'm really hungry and need food right away. Because in the time it'll take me to buy the gold, sorry, to sell the gold, um, and get the food versus just going to the store and purchasing the food right away. So an asset can become a liability very easily. The whole point of money, right, is one of its benefits, like cash money, fiat currency, is it's easy to carry, it's easy to transport, it's easy to use. Um, well, big 431, first you got to hit like and subscribe. Um, there was a movie, yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that movie, but I know the one you're talking about. Well, I would recommend no one use their money for toilet paper. Or if you do, don't sue me because I'm not giving you that idea. It seems like a pretty terrible idea. Big 431, then thank you for already being subscribed. I appreciate the offer, Big 431, but I'm going to have to pass. Um, if they offer me 20 more years, well, so Aristotle, when you say 20 more years, do you mean 20 more years from today or 20 more years from when I would die anyways? So let's say the average life expectancy, I forget what it is, but let's assume the average life expectancy is 75 years of age. Are you saying I would live to 95 or I can take the 2 million? Or are you saying either I can live till I'm 42, till I'm 62, or get 2 million? Because um, I hope to just pass away when it's my time, not any earlier. But having said that, if it's 20 years tacked on to the end of my life when I would die anyways, I'd probably take the 2 million. Because I feel like within that 2 million, I could do a lot of potentially good for Freemasonry, for the world, for my family. Um, but if it was, I take the 2 million and I die at the age of 62, then I would say no. Because I think I'll live a few years past 62. Um, we're going to give this another. Jesus, yes, I'm a Freemason. Jesus is King. I've been a Freemason since 2007. Technically, that's what this stream is. That's what we talk about. However, I very often end up on other subjects, such as today, monetary policy. How's it going, Steeps? Welcome. Thank you for joining. I'm going to be ending this stream pretty soon. I think actually this has gone on a little bit longer than we've done the last few weeks, but um, how's it going, Steeps? I hope you're doing well. Okay, then I would take the 2 million and pass away at 75. I'd be comfortable with that. Because that would give me, what? That'd give me 33 years. I could do a lot in 33 years with $2 million. Hopefully, a lot to make the world a better place. Fingers crossed. Or at least build a better world. But again, I wouldn't want to go out at 62. Just be happy. That's how you ensure that you are the richest man of all. We're going to give this another couple minutes. As always, please do a 99-cent super chat. Hit that like and subscribe button. And thank you for joining. Well, in that case, Apple Tree, you should join Freemasonry. You'll get your fill of people, that's for sure. You'll get your fill of brothers, in fact. Okay, cool. I mean, everybody's different. Some people love Freemasonry. Some people join and don't get that into it. It's a personal thing, right? But I hope that um, I hope that you consider looking into it. Or I hope that you keep looking into it, I should say. Well, I think I'm not brainwashed. Who knows? That is very true, as Steeps puts it. Everyone gets what they put into it. Um, within, and this is true for any organization. You want to be a great musician, you got to put a lot of time and effort into it. You want to be a great artist, you want to be a great singer, you want to be a great actor, you want to be a great electrician, you want to be a great professional wrestler. You have to be willing to put a lot of time and effort into your art, into your craft, and Freemasonry is no different. It's called the craft for a reason. You need to put a lot of time and effort into it to get a lot out of it. Yes, the Moose Lodge is different from Freemasonry. The Moose Lodge is another civic organization. It started after Freemasonry. If I recall correctly, it started in the early 19th century, early 20th century. There's not a religious component to being a Freemason. Freemasonry is not a religion. You do need to believe in a supreme being to be a Freemason. We have Muslim, Jewish, indigenous, Wiccan, spiritual, like me, Freemasons. But Freemasonry is not a religion. There are kind of religious, what I would say is, I wouldn't even use the term religious, I would say there are ceremonial trappings to being a Freemason, like there's a volume of the Sacred Law, which oftentimes by default is a Bible, but it can also be a Quran, it can be a Torah, but Freemasonry itself is not a religion. And you can be somebody such as myself. Again, I believe in a supreme being, but I would not consider myself to be a follower of any religion who loves Freemasonry. Yes, someone said great artist, Winding Stairs. As you are. I get it, Apple Tree. All right, I understand you didn't mean me brainwashing. It's okay. I am in Canada. I'm in my home. However, the Winding Stairs, I will be in Scotland in about 2 weeks, less than that, for the AVDA, the Arcana Veritas Distinction Awards, and I am beyond excited for it. So I look forward to being there very, very much. In Spanish, we describe, there is an element of that to it. Certainly, there's an element of Freemasonry that is predicated on freedom, freedom of organization, freedom of assembly, freedom of belief, the freedom to believe what you will about politics, religion, and life. Um, I'm busy, Mike. I'm busy enough as it is. I don't have time to join Scientology. Freedom of thought. Well, and so Steeps, absolutely, that is the case. There is Eastern Star for females. There's also the International Order of Rainbow, which is for young women, right, ages 9 to 21. It's a Masonic youth group. There's also, and I do always mention it, the International Order of Women Freemasons. They're actually fairly well recognized in England, out of the United Grand Lodge of England. They also exist in Ontario, and actually a few International Order of Women Freemasons lodges meet in Masonic buildings. They are allowed to meet in our buildings, and some do. So I always say, I used to say Freemasonry is a fraternity. I tend to shy away from that a little bit now. Rather, what I say is Freemasonry is an umbrella term that applies to any social or civic groups or organizations that evolved from the stonemason guilds of the 15th century. Thank you, the winding stairs. And I do think, this is just me speaking, one of the errors we made in Freemasonry historically is not showing enough respect to the Order of Women Freemasons. They do that fairly frequently in United Grand Lodge of England at this point. I think we're a little bit behind on that in Canada. However, again, the Order of Women Freemasons do meet in our Masonic lodges in Ontario. Yes, I've known some LGBTQ Freemasons. I've known a few gay Freemasons. Well, that is not the case, Mike, because I know many Moose Lodge members, none of whom are Freemasons. Actually, I did know one person who was both a Moose Lodge member and a Freemason. So one out of several. So I guess take that for whatever it's worth. We do not worship Moloch, nor do we do any type of magic. Once again, everything I say, I'm speaking for myself exclusively. I'm not speaking on behalf of Freemasons or Freemasonry. Oh my gosh, Aristotle, what a question that is. What is the history of Freemasonry? So Freemasonry, the simple history is in the Middle Ages, you had stone mason guilds, which were tradesmen, craftsmen who made things out of stone, who shaped stone. They formed into guilds or groups, which were basically the ancient equivalent of unions, to protect their trade secrets. They had meeting places where they would train their apprentices, and teach people the art of working with stone. Over time, men wanted to join these groups, not because they wanted to learn how to build things out of stone. That was not the case, but rather because they wanted to join for the social aspect and the social support quality of it. And over time, these men, which were called speculative Freemasons, began to outnumber the operative Freemasons. And Freemasonry was formed, which is basically social or civic groups that apply the lessons of stonemasonry in a metaphorical sense to their lives. And in 2025, it is a social group and a social club. Every Freemason has to decide for themselves the purpose behind Freemasonry. No two Masons will have the exact same purpose or understanding as to why they join. For me, the purpose of Freemasonry has always been the same thing, at least for me, which is to try and build a better world or better community through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Hello, Lapri360. I got a lot of viewers, so forgive me for not getting to everybody's stuff right away, questions or comments. the founding fathers of, not all. You always want to avoid, for a piece of advice, for whatever it's worth, Lapri, you always want to avoid using the word all. To my knowledge, 9 of the founding fathers of America were Freemasons. Most people know George Washington, Ben Franklin, Paul Revere, and John Hancock were Freemasons. I can't think of the others off the top of my head, but of the number in total, 9 were Freemasons. I think there were 56 signers. I think it was like between 9 and 11 of the signers of the Declaration were Freemasons. Brandon Shields. I mean, I can tell you, I think child marriage is wrong for whatever it's worth. I don't think anybody should be getting married if they're a child, for obvious reasons. Masons, you'd have to ask each individual Mason, Lepre. There are about 850,000 Freemasons in the States. You'd have to ask each 850,000. To be a Freemason, you must believe in a supreme being. However, that supreme being is up to the individual Mason. Yes, I am a Freemason. So, there are Masons who are Muslims, Jewish, Christian, Catholic, and Protestant. There are Masons who are Wiccan, Wiccan. There are Masons who are like me, spiritual, but not necessarily follow any particular religion. Who do I worship? So for me, I believe in a supreme being. The supreme being I believe in is best described as the rational order of the universe as described through mathematical and scientific understanding. I believe that it's made its will known to us through the rational nature of the universe and through math and science. I believe every time we write an equation, it shows the face of the supreme being. And I believe it's known to us and it favors virtue because if we act in accordance to the rational laws of the universe, we're going to have a better life. If, for example, we don't believe in gravity and we go jumping off of cliffs, we're going to have a very bad and very short life. You do not get money for being a Freemason, Liberty Bible. Anybody who tells you that if you become a Freemason, you'll get rich or famous is at best, they're wrong, but they're more than likely lying to you or trying to scam you. Right, and it is very common, unfortunately, for people to get messages on Facebook. Steeps may have gotten some of them, saying, join Freemasonry, join the Illuminati, and join the Masonic Order of the Illuminati, and you'll get riches and fame and fortune. That is not the case. So again, at best, they're lying, but they're more than likely scamming you. You should never join, I don't think you should join anything with a desire to get money. Even, I know this is going to sound weird, even, you should never even join a job to get money. I know that sounds strange. I think you should join anything first and foremost out of a desire to contribute to the world and a desire to contribute to whatever it is you're joining. I think the reason to join Freemasonry is because you think you can contribute something to the lodge or to the community as a whole. Welcome from Finland. Haven't had anybody from Finland in before. I know a little bit about the Oddfellows, not a ton. So I'm sorry I can't speak much about them. There's obviously, and most people know this, a lot of overlap between Freemasons and the Oddfellows, in that a lot of Freemasons became members of the Oddfellows. Are there any rules? I mean, I would say, and this goes back to the Regius poem and the Anderson Constitutions, the ultimate rule to abide by when you are a Freemason is to be a good man. Again, speaking exclusively for the fraternal side of the order, it's to be a good man. That's the ultimate rule of being a Freemason. However, There are other rules as well. For example, you are not allowed to discuss religion or politics while in a lodge. And I think that is, for obvious reasons, those are things that tend to divide people. And then every lodge will have its own bylaws as well as a constitution, which will have things like dress codes. In Ontario, it's usually wearing a suit and tie, um, showing up to lodge on time, not disrupting a lodge, things of that nature. But I would say the overarching ideal of being a Freemason and the rule of being a Freemason is to be a good man and true. And that dates all the way back to the Anderson Constitutions of 1723. Um, so the Mormons do, I don't know what the Mormons do or do not do. I know the original founder of the Mormons, Joseph Smith, was a Freemason. Again, to my knowledge, I know some Mormon Freemasons, right? Mormons believe in a supreme being, so they could join Freemasonry, and many have. Um, like I said, beyond that, I can't speak too much to Mormonism as I don't know a ton about it. Well, Brandon, what I'm going to say is Um, I have been lucky enough within my life to know many Muslims. I've actually worked with several, and they were good people. They were friendly. They were kind. They cared about this country called Canada, and they cared about me as their friend. And none of them were involved in anything illegal, including child marriage. So I'm not going to denounce Muslims. I consider myself blessed to have known several Muslims, or lucky to have known them, including my Masonic brethren who are Muslims, um, none of whom I've ever seen engage in any type of criminal activity. Um, and I would say, Finn, that's a very good attitude to take. To be a Freemason is to believe in the value of being a good citizen. In fact, one of my views, and I've always believed this, is the phrase good citizen and Freemason should be interchangeable, should be synonymous. If I say someone is a Freemason, if he's doing it correctly and doing Freemasonry properly and understanding the philosophical um, um, understanding of Freemasonry, then he should be, by definition, a good citizen. Now, Freemasons are human beings, fortunately or unfortunately, which means we have all of the positives and negatives and foibles of what it means to be human. Not every human being and not every Freemason acts as a good citizen. That's unfortunate. But I think if you're doing Freemasonry right and properly and correct, you are more likely to be a good citizen, as well as just a good person in general. Um, Welcome back, Tofik. Thank you for being here. By the way, to everybody watching this, it's not too late. Do a 99-cent super chat, hit the like and subscribe button. Define good. Well, I appreciate Steeps defining good. And I do like what Steeps said. He mentioned he was a Freemason. I would mention as well. And I like what Steeps said, that last line. Again, when people ask questions like, what do Freemasons believe? Or can a Freemason define good? In the States, there's 850,000 Freemasons in the United States, give or take. There's about 60 to 65,000 in Canada, give or take. Every one of those will have a different definition of good, or a slightly different definition of good. You may see commonalities. I'm not begging, but I am asking. This is my goal, is to turn my passion of Freemasonry into a profession through YouTube and content creation. I would define good as, I think Aristotle, not the Aristotle on this stream, but I think Aristotle had the best definition of good. It is to live in accordance with nature. Actually, sorry, that's the Stoic definition of good. I would define good as to live in accordance with nature. Aristotle defined it as eudaimonia. So what that means, for example, is The reason why it is not good for me to harm somebody else is because doing so would be against both my nature and the nature of community. Because it will only result in myself being harmed, right? So, to live in accordance with nature or the rational understanding of nature. Um, yes, Mr. Keeps. By the way, Mr. Keeps, if you want to define um, uh, if you want to define good, by all means, please do so. Anybody else can, right? Anybody else can define good. I'd love to hear, even if you're non-Mason, what your view of good is. Um, Mike is an angry, cranky fella, but you know what? That's okay. I think it's important to do these streams and include having the mics of the world in these streams because the mics of the world, if they're not here, they may very well be on social media talking poop about Freemasonry. And so being here to talk to them directly, hopefully, at the very least, it helps maybe, if not mitigate their views, mitigate the views of other who will see me arguing against his ideas and understand why he's incorrect. Fair enough. Well, when I said Aristotle, I meant the Aristotle of 2,000 years ago in Eudomania. However, what is your definition of happiness, Aristotle? Now, I'm assuming that you are not actually the legit Aristotle of 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, or when did Aristotle live? 2,300 years ago, I think it was. However, if you are that Aristotle, then welcome. Welcome back from the dead. It's good to have you return. I like your philosophy very much. Um, yeah, well, I always say, Steeps, the best way to combat the misconceptions about Freemasonry would be to invite them to a meeting. They would be very disappointed very quickly. But yeah, I would be curious, Mike, what is your idea or opinion on happiness? My suspicion is your view of happiness may, because you did mention above, there was some talk of it seemed more religiously based. Um, what is your discussion about? Which is fine, by the way. You can have a definition of happiness that is based on religious belief, and I know a lot of guys who are religious, like very devoutly religious, and base their happiness on kind of a religious understanding of it, and are able to find happiness and also contribute greatly to the world and the community. Um, well, Brandon, we will all die forever. How can you be happy? I mean, I can be happy knowing I will die one day. Doesn't stop me from being happy. What is this discussion about, Les Red? We're talking, I mean, broadly Freemasonry, but we kind of evolved the discussion into more political or philosophical ideas right now about happiness. What are your thoughts on happiness? Freemasonry makes me happy, for whatever it's worth. There's a lot of ignorant prejudice. You're not wrong, Aristotle. There's a lot of prejudices in the world about a lot of things, including Freemasonry. But that's just one of many things. But I do think Masonic prejudices is on the rise. There's an increased reporting of, there's increased reports of vandalism and violence towards Freemasons in the States, some parts of Canada. So it's very nerve-wracking. But again, that's why it's important that I think we do streams like this, because the quieter we as Freemasons are, the louder the people who are anti-Freemasonry will become. Well, Brandon, you say that you go to America and say that you might not end up so well for you. I don't know. You could be a tough dude, but I'd be very hesitant about testing that theory. As Steve said, absolutely. And that's the thing I always bring out. Like Freemasonry, not everybody is going to love Freemasonry. Even people who join Freemasonry are not necessarily going to love it. And that's perfectly fine. Not everybody has to, right? It's like music. Your favorite song. Not everybody has the favorite song, the same favorite song. It's not all, at the end of the day, it's not about the song, it's about the individual and his relationship to the song. That's what makes it beautiful. That's what makes it his favorite song. Freemasonry is exactly the same. If you find peace and happiness through something other than Freemasonry, then more power to you. Someone who's doing spiritual magic outside, well, I mean, so long as they're not doing the markings on the building, then that's okay. As long as they're not vandalizing the building itself. Um, you're basically woman slash men. All right, well, you know, tell that to, I don't know, tell that to Chandler, see what happens, I suppose. Or any of the MMA fighters from America. You might not go so well for you. The MMA fighter. I'm trying to think. Can't think of his name now. That's Michael Chandler. There we go. I have no idea what he's on. He's just a very funny dude. I've also seen similar. Well, again, I mean, so long as um, I've also seen similar markings outside. So long as they're doing the markings, you know, so long as they're not vandalizing the churches with the markings. If they're doing it on the street or on chalk, then that's one thing. If they're vandalizing the grounds, the property, or the building with markings, then that's not okay. Whether it's a Catholic church, a Masonic lodge, or any type of building. Are there any other brother? I mean, there's many. GSP was Canadian. Are there any? I think he was Canadian, right? Are there any other organizations or fraternity of? Well, within Freemasonry, there are a ton of different groups and rites and bodies. And I mean, you can join Freemasonry and you can join a million groups therein. There's Scottish rite bodies, there's York rite bodies, there's Shrine. There's also, I mean, the individual meeting places will themselves have committees and clubs. They might have a social committee or a social club. They could have a Masonic book club. Um, and then, I mean, if you're in Europe, you can. There's Memphis, Mizraim. So there are the beautiful thing about Freemasonry. One of the many beautiful things about Freemasonry is all of the different groups that exist within the umbrella of being a Freemason and Freemasonry. I would say do everything with a pure heart. And if not God, then the great architect of the universe will protect you. At least you kind of have to hope that's the case, right? Um, the old expression I've always loved, right? Dear God, I do not know what the right thing to do is, but the fact I'm trying, I hope makes you happy. I think if you have a pure heart and good intentions, then you can rely to a certain extent on a supreme being or your supreme being to maybe protect you, maybe provide you guidance. One of my favorite quotes from back in the day was from a colleague of mine. He was Muslim, but he was a very cool dude. He once told me, "Do your best and let God do the rest." and I think that's pretty decent advice. In a Masonic context, what you could say is, um, all right, Brandon, we're just going to put you in a little bit of a timeout for a second here. Um, what was I saying? Yeah, in a Masonic context, again, you could say, do your best, let the supreme being, or let your supreme being do the rest, right? Because what more can you do but your best, right? By definition, how much more can you do but your best? Welcome. If you are just joining us, this has been a very fun stream. I've been having a great time. Oh, elections. Enjoy the elections. I hope you enjoy them, Boss Troll. I'm sure it's going to be. Election nights are really fun, but they can be long nights. So if you're having your elections this month, then that would mean you're having your installation next month, right? I find December installations are really great months to have an installation because you can kind of tie it in with a Christmas party. You can kind of tie it in with a Christmas event or a holiday event or a holiday celebration. The lodge might be decorated. It can be a lot of fun. So, if get this poppy off, well, it's Remembrance Day. It's Remembrance Day here in Canada. So no, the Tyler can be invited in to the lodge, so long as the Worship Master remembers to invite him in. If it's a degree or a installation or something like that, then he hates a lot of things. Then normally the Tyler will stay outside for the entire meeting, including during the installation. If it's a business meeting, he can be invited in. And he can be invited in during a degree or during an installation, at the request of the Worshipful Master. I agree with Mr. Keeps on that one. Brandon's just a cranky dude, Hopefully he gets less cranky as time goes on. Maybe who knows, he'll find a Masonic lodge at some point, and that'll help him realize the world is actually a pretty decent place. Thank you again, everybody who is here. Yes, Canadians, remember, I was at the Windsor Memorial today, the cenotaph. I took some live streaming of it while I was there, so congratulations to Windsor for hosting another excellent Remembrance Day memorial service. I don't disagree with any of that, but I suppose we could all use a slice of humble pie. Certainly I could. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It's been a blast. I will be back on at 1 a.m. And I am going to start looking more into this idea again of grand unified theory of housing, how the increasing unaffordability of housing in Canada and the US may actually be having a negative impact on Freemasonry in general and civic engagement in particular. Thank you, Finn, for being here as well. Well, you should sleep, Mr. Keeps. You work hard, so sleep. I cannot imagine the mental acuity that goes into tech, not even tech support, tech security. But I would like to know that my tech security specialist is getting sleep. But I will be back on at 1 a.m. All right, guys, thank you so much. I will see you all soon. Don't forget, like, subscribe, etc., etc. All right, see you guys later. Thank you, Steeps.